Chapter 1641. The bandit leader stared at the fallen Jialan monarch. The eyes beneath the mask were incomparably deep. After that, it was as though nothing had happened. He glanced in the other directions and spoke, "Everyone, hand over all the mines. For those who don't, kill them without mercy." Everyone felt their hearts trembling. How would they dare to resist? Even the immortal emperors who came with the Jialan monarch were all dumbfounded. The Jialan monarch was killed. Even a powerful monarch was killed on the spot. How could they resist? What difference was there between resisting and courting death? At this moment, it was clear that their lives were more important. Great waves rose up in their hearts. They still felt that this was a little surreal. This world was too crazy. The last time bandits appeared was when Yi Qianyu and her group appeared. At that time, those bandits were already powerful and tyrannical enough, causing the Jialan monarch to be in a miserable state. At the end, the Lifefire Palace interfered and managed to suppress them, imprisoning Yi Qianyu and bringing Qin Wendian away as well. However, after 100 years, the bandits appeared again. In addition, they were even more ruthless and tyrannical, even more daring and crazy, directly killing the Jialan monarch. No matter what relationship the Jialan monarch had with the Lifefire Empyrean, he was one of the 9 monarchs and was a subordinate of the lifelong realm lord. As a bandit, you actually dared to rob a mine belonging to a realm lord and killed a monarch? This was definitely a great taboo. The Lifefire Palace would definitely hunt you down. If you were merely a bandit, the Lifefire Palace would only investigate the Jialan monarch. But since the Jialan monarch was killed by you, how could the Lifefire Palace not investigate to the end? These bandits were prepared to endure the towering anger of the Lifefire Palace. However, all of these were matters for the future. The subordinates of the Jialan monarch, the guards of the Skyfall mine, all trembled as they handed over the mines. No one dared to resist and all of them were extremely obedient. The bandits directly seized the mines and no longer killed anyone. It was like they were just a bunch of ordinary bandits. If the Jialan monarch didn't die. Let's go. After that, the bandit leader waved his hands. The group of them soared into the air and swiftly vanished from this area. The experts in the sky meteorite mines still haven't recovered from their shock. All of them stared dumbfoundedly at the corpse of the Jialan monarch. Someone spoke, "Send this news to the Lifefire Palace with the fastest speed. If not, all of us will be doomed." As for the group of bandits, they directly left the sky meteorite mine and arrived in the airspace above a desolate mountain far away. A group of bandits had unkind gazes as they stared at their leader. "Why did you kill the Jialan monarch? Have you gone mad?" Clearly, they didn't know that they were here to kill the Jialan monarch. "What's done is done. You guys have already taken the mine. What's the point of saying so much? Disperse." The bandit leader calmly spoke, as though killing the Jialan monarch wasn't a big deal. "We agreed that we would only rob the mine. Because of your strength, we agreed to be bandits and let you block the Jialan monarch and the others. However, you actually killed the Jialan monarch. Are you trying to cause our deaths? Who are you exactly?" Another person coldly spoke. The bandit leader's cold eyes directly landed on him as a terrifying killing intent enveloped this space. The pressure was terrifying to the extreme. The gazes of the bandits instantly froze as they felt their bodies turning cold. Only now did they realize that the bandit leader was someone who even dared to kill the Jialan monarch. If he wanted to silence them, wouldn't it be a simple matter? Yet, they actually dared to question the bandit leader. When they thought of this, their expressions all turned pale. "You should know that we are all so anxious. This is too crazy, we don't understand." Another person spoke. His tone was much gentler than before. Clearly, he was worried that the bandit leader would kill all of them in a fit of anger. "Things have already been done, what's the point of thinking so much? The cultivation resources have already been distributed. It's much better compared to you guys being unaffiliated cultivators. Also, this is only a one-time deal. In the future, all of you can go back and do what you want to do. In the future, don't appear as bandits again. Without any clues, who would be able to trace it back to you guys? The bandit leader calmly spoke. All of you can disperse. You guys don't even know each other's identities. Just leave and we won't have anything to do with each other in the future. The eyes of everyone flashed. This bandit leader was right. It's just that this time around, they didn't leave any clues behind. It wouldn't be so easy to trace them back to them. This time around, they chose to become bandits because it was too tough to be unaffiliated cultivators. They lacked cultivation resources, and at this moment, this terrifying bandit leader came looking for them and displayed his strength, wanting to bring them along to do a big job. They agreed, and hence, this matter happened today. Farewell. Numerous figures directly soared into the air and departed. They didn't waste any words and didn't even interact with each other. It would be best if they didn't know each other and didn't know each other. In that case, if someone found out about this, they wouldn't be implicated. Robbing a mine and killing a monarch. If they were caught by the Livefire Palace, only death would await them. Livefire City, Northern City Region, Governor's Manor. Within the Governor's Manor, a white-robed figure walked out. This figure was incomparably handsome and exuded a carefree aura. Many people in the Governor's Manor inclined their heads and stared at this white-robed figure. Their eyes were filled with respect. This was their governor, their exuding magnificence through the generations. Back then, he single-handedly defeated all the governors and monarchs of the 9 world palaces. How glorious was that? Although their governor has been very low profile during these years, no one dared to show any disrespect to him. When they looked at the white-robed figure, it was like they were looking at a divinity. This was their faith, a godlike existence. The white-robed figure turned his gaze over and stared at the crowd below. Everyone could clearly see his incomparably handsome countenance. He was extremely outstanding. I'm going out to temper myself and might need some time. If someone comes to look for me, just tell them that I'm not around. Unless there's an extremely important matter, don't disturb me. The white-robed figure calmly spoke. After that, his silhouette flashed, transforming into a beam of light as he vanished. Everyone stared at the departing figure, feeling a sense of disappointment and frustration. Even for them, there weren't many chances for them to personally see this white-robed figure. Lord Governor, is he going out to temper himself again? No one knew where he would go this time around. The news of the Jialan monarch's death was circulated back to the Emperor Palace in Jialan Emperor City at the fastest speed. After that, the Livefire Palace heard about it. In fact, there were even people who used teleportation arrays to bring the Jialan monarch's corpse to the Livefire Palace to report this. Within the Livefire Palace, many experts gathered together, arriving at the Great Hall of the Livefire Palace. The Livefire Emperor personally came. When he saw the Jialan monarch's corpse, his expression instantly turned cold to the extreme. Although the Jialan monarch was someone from the Jialan clan and he didn't wish for the Jialan monarch to sit in that position, no matter what, the Jialan monarch was still his subordinate. If he didn't want the Jialan monarch to sit in that position, he should be the one to kick the Jialan monarch away. However, there was actually someone who stole a mine and killed one of the 9 monarchs in the territory of his Livefire Palace. Stealing a mine, killing a monarch. Such a vile act actually happened in the territory of his Livefire Palace. One could very well imagine that the Jialan clan would definitely make use of this matter to make a big fuss and report him to the Realm Lord. How did he, the Livefire Emperor, govern the territory of the Livefire Palace? Tell me everything clearly. The Livefire Emperor had a sinister look on his face. After that, the person below began to tremble as he reported everything. You are saying that the Jialan monarch might be acquainted with the bandit who killed him and even guessed who it was? But he didn't even have the chance to say it? The Livefire Emperor coldly spoke when he heard that person's report. That person bowed. This subordinate thinks so. Back then, the Jialan monarch's tone was as though he had already guessed who the bandit was. However, this subordinate doesn't dare to be certain. After all, the Jialan monarch didn't even say it out loud before he was killed. Although Jialan's strength isn't too strong, he's already in charge of a territory. there wouldn't be too many people who could deal with him. As for those who could directly kill him, that number would be even fewer. In addition, since this bandit only killed the Jalan monarch, it means that there's a grudge between them. If we eliminate this, who else do you all think it could be? The Liefire Empyrean coldly spoke. He wasn't just asking the people from Jalan Emperor City, he was also asking the people from the Liefire Palace. The eyes of the people from the Liefire Palace flashed, they seemed to have thought of a person. However, no one dared to say it. When the people from the Jalan Emperor Palace heard the Liefire Empyrean's words, they also seemed to have thought of a person. Similarly, they didn't dare to say it. If there's anything, just say it. Everyone here is my trusted aide. The Liefire Empyrean coldly spoke. This subordinate is worried that I might say something wrong. The Jalan monarch's subordinate bowed. Speak. The Liefire Empyrean coldly spoke. That subordinate's body trembled as he bowed, there's such a person. He was once a bandit and he definitely has the strength and motive to kill the Jalan monarch. The eyes of everyone flashed. Sharpness gleamed in many people's eyes. The words of this person were exactly the same as what they were thinking. Although this person has always been low profile, would he really do such a thing? Back then, the moment he took over, he killed 3 vice-governors and kept a low profile for many years. When he acted again, he killed over 10 immortal emperors and seized control of the ancient river auction house, shaking the northern regions. After doing all these, he acted as though nothing had happened and kept a low profile to cultivate. When he appeared again, he defied the Liefire Empyrean's orders and went to Lifelong City, causing his name to shake the entire Lifelong realm. The possibility of him being the culprit was too high. Given his personality, it was extremely normal for him to do such a thing. After keeping a low profile for tens of years, the moment he acted, it was as though he wanted to kill the Jalan monarch. At this moment, even the Liefire Empyrean's eyes flashed with an extremely cold light. Was it really him? Did he dare to be so audacious to provoke him? During these years, both of them had a tacit understanding, coexisting peacefully. The Liefire Empyrean didn't find trouble with the Jalan monarch and the Jalan monarch was also very low profile and humble, quietly serving as his vice-governor, not creating trouble or stirring up trouble. If the Jalan monarch continued acting like this, the Liefire Empyrean wouldn't mind continuing to rope him in. However, if the Jalan monarch bore a grudge for what happened in the past and killed the Jalan monarch, that would be crossing his bottom line. Not only did this mean that the Liefire Empyrean would be smacking his face, there was another layer of meaning. Today, the Jalan monarch could kill the Jalan monarch. In the future, when he was strong enough, would he be able to do the same to the Liefire Empyrean? Chapter 1642. The Liefire Empyrean's expression turned heavy. It was very rare for him to be like this in front of his subordinates. But some people seemed to be challenging his bottom line. If he was really the one who did it, there would only be one ending for him. Upon thinking of this, a trace of killing intent flashed in the Liefire Empyrean's eyes. Clearly, the Liefire Empyrean had already determined that it was him. Other than him, he couldn't think of anyone else who would take such a risk to kill a monarch of the Liefire Palace. If it was just a bandit, it was one thing to plunder the mine. But was there a need to kill a monarch? It would be fine as long as they controlled the situation. This would only infuriate the upper echelons to investigate this matter. To bandits, there was no benefit at all. There were very few people with this kind of strength and motive. He could only think of one person. Moreover, it was someone who had been a bandit before, so he should be very familiar with it. The Liefire Palace, the northern governor, Qin Wentian. You can't speak nonsense. I believe that the subordinates of my Liefire Palace know their limits. The Liefire Empyrean had a heavy expression on his face. It seemed like he thought that the words of the person before him had offended him, causing that person to tremble in fear. An immortal emperor was about to prostrate on the ground. That formless pressure caused him to feel suffocated. This subordinate knows his mistake. That person spoke in a low voice. It's good that you know. The Livefire Empyrean calmly spoke. Men, immediately send people to the various governors' manors and summon them to the Livefire Palace as soon as possible for a discussion. The eyes of everyone flashed with sharpness when they heard this. The Livefire Empyrean was still the best. Although he said not to suspect a certain person, in truth, he actually sent people to inform the various governors to gather here for a discussion. Discussion? What discussion? The Livefire Empyrean wanted to see if the governors were in their manors or not, right? Yes. Someone immediately received the order and moved out with extreme speed. In fact, they didn't even use messaging crystals to inform the Livefire Empyrean. They had to personally go to the governor's manor to take a look before they knew if the governors were in their manors or not. This was what the Livefire Empyrean wanted to know. Not long after, news came from outside the Livefire Palace. The clan leader of the Jialan clan, Jialan Yintian, brought some people from the Jialan clan to pay a visit. The Livefire Empyrean naturally wouldn't obstruct them. After all, the Jialan monarch was someone from the Jialan clan. It was only normal for them to want to pay a visit. An instant later, Jialan Yintian led a group of people from the Jialan clan over. His eyes were fixed on the corpse on the ground. Jialan Yintian walked forward and came to the side of the corpse. His fists were clenched so tightly that green veins could be seen popping out. It was as though he aged a lot in an instant. Squatting down, Jialan Yintian gently stroked the Jialan monarch's face. This hegemon of the Jialan clan actually had some redness in his eyes. Regardless of whether the Jialan monarch disappointed him or not, this was still his son. Also, Jialan monarch's talent had always been outstanding. If not, he wouldn't have allowed him to take on such a heavy responsibility. However, this son of his who had displayed outstanding talent since young was now a corpse lying here, cold. The eyes of the people from the Jialan clan all turned red, filled with rage and killing intent. No matter what their relationship was when the Jialan monarch was alive, he was still someone from the Jialan clan and was an extremely important member. Now, he had been killed. Palace Lord, what's going on? Jialan Yintian's voice trembled as he asked. He did his best to control his tone, trying to appear calm. Tell the Jialan clan leader what happened. The Livefire Empyrean glanced at the immortal emperor who came to report. After that immortal emperor recounted what happened, killing intent flashed in the eyes of the people from the Jialan clan. Someone even spoke, it must be him. Other than Qin Wentian, there's no one else. That's right, only he would have such strength and motive. Not only that, he was also a bandit before. Someone added. After everyone heard this, the first person they thought of was Qin Wentian. Shut your mouth. Jialan Yintian berated, his voice was ice cold. This caused the others to stare at him, feeling puzzled. Their Jialan clan had expressed their goodwill to Qin Wentian many times but Qin Wentian completely ignored them. In fact, he even openly threatened them back then, saying that the Jialan monarch must die for sure. Now, the Jialan monarch has really died. Other than Qin Wentian, who else could it be? When they thought of this, the people from the Jialan clan were incomparably enraged. That bastard, they had already been extremely benevolent to Qin Wentian, never making things difficult for him and had always wanted to mend their relationship. Yet, Qin Wentian actually still acted against them. Palace Lord, these people speak without thinking, please don't blame them. Jialan Yintian bowed to the Livefire Empyrean. He naturally suspected Qin Wentian as well but Qin Wentian was a governor of the Livefire Palace. No matter what, before they had sufficient evidence, they wouldn't be able to say that Qin Wentian was the murderer. In addition, back then in the Lifelong Realm, the Realm Lord had personally said that they weren't allowed to investigate Qin Wentian's background as a bandit. Qin Wentian is the northern governor of my Livefire Palace. You guys better pay attention to your words or don't blame this seat for punishing you. As for the Jialan monarch's death, I will naturally investigate this matter to the end. No matter who the culprit is, I will definitely kill them. The Livefire Empyrean coldly spoke, his tone filled with killing intent. This caused the hearts of the people from the Jialan clan to tremble as they understood Jialan Yintian's meaning. After all, they were originally at odds with the Liefire Empyrean. They couldn't leave any evidence that could be used against them. Slandering a governor wasn't a small matter. Although they felt that this was definitely the case, at the very least, they haven't found out anything yet. I've already sent a message to the governors of Liefire City, telling them to investigate this matter. Jialan clan leader, don't worry. The Liefire Empyrean's tone softened as he calmly spoke. The eyes of the people from the Jialan clan flashed. Did he already send a message to the governors? In that case, they would soon know whether Qin Wentian was in the governor's manor or not. Since this was the case, they would just wait here. Time slowly flowed by. The atmosphere in the majestic Liefire Palace grew heavy. The death of a monarch was definitely not a small matter. Let alone the fact that he was killed by bandits. Very swiftly, this news circulated to Liefire City. For a period of time, the entire city was in a commotion as many people discussed about this. The Jialan monarch was actually killed by someone. Under the Liefire Palace, there was a grand governor, 5 governors, and 9 monarchs. But in truth, the monarchs were the true rulers of a region. They controlled mines and resources and had immense authority. They also controlled many cities, and the cultivation resources they could obtain far surpassed what governors could compare to. Even a grand governor wouldn't be able to compare to them. However, the Jialan monarch of the Jialan clan was actually killed by bandits. This matter instantly spread like wildfire. Many people were speculating about the murderer, and many people involuntarily thought of the northern governor, Qin Wentian. They couldn't help but to think that Qin Wentian was the most suspicious. In fact, there were even people who sighed in admiration. Qin Wentian was as expected of a supreme genius. Back then, he dared to disobey the Liefire Empyrean's orders and headed to Lifelong City, shocking the world with a single feat. Now, he even pretended to be a bandit and killed the Jialan monarch. This was simply too crazy. The various governors of Liefire City were all summoned to the Liefire Palace. Beauty Xiao furrowed her brows. She used her messaging crystal to contact Qin Wentian, but Qin Wentian didn't reply. This caused her to silently curse that fellow for being too impulsive. Killing the Jialan monarch at this moment, wasn't that simply courting death? This would definitely infuriate the Liefire Empyrean. Once the Liefire Empyrean found out who the murderer was, he would definitely kill Qin Wentian before reporting the matter to the higher-ups. Killing a monarch, even if Qin Wentian killed Qin Wentian, the Realm Lord wouldn't say anything either. In Liefire City, Grand Governor Zhuge Xiong was the first to arrive. After him was Lin Ba, Sun Qian, who took over Xia Ho's position, Beauty Xiao, and Yin Qiu. Only Qin Wentian didn't arrive. Upon seeing this scene, Beauty Xiao's smile stiffened. Qin Wentian really didn't appear. The people of the Jialan clan all had ashen expressions. The Liefire Empyrean's expression was also extremely sinister. Was this really Qin Wentian? If this was the case, don't blame him then. Finally, the immortal emperor who went to the northern governor's manor returned. He even brought someone with him. The Liefire Empyrean's expression completely sank when he saw this. That immortal emperor walked towards him and bowed, reporting to Palace Lord, Governor Qin isn't in the governor's manor. Boom! Many people from the Jialan clan flashed with terrifying killing intent. Jialan Yintian's eyes also flashed with sharpness. As expected, it was him. The Liefire Empyrean radiated coldness. Just when he wanted to speak, that immortal emperor continued, however, according to the people in the governor's manor, Governor Qin left not long ago, saying that he has something important to do outside. If there's nothing important, don't disturb him. I intentionally brought an attendant here with me. Michem. The eyes of everyone flashed when they heard this. The people of the Jialan clan frowned. The Liefire Empyrean stared at that attendant and asked, when did Governor Qin leave? Reporting to Palace Lord, about 4 hours ago. That attendant trembled as he replied. The number of people before him was so vast, and there was even the corpse of the Jalan monarch lying on the ground. He seemed to have realized something. Did he intentionally tell you before he left? The Liefire Empyrean asked again. Not only for me, there are many people in the governor's manor as well. At that time, Lord Governor directly walked out from the inner manor and left a message for us saying that he wanted to leave. Everyone saw it. That attendant didn't dare to hesitate and honestly replied. The Liefire Empyrean turned his gaze to the attendant who headed to the northern governor's manor. That attendant then replied, Palace Lord, this is indeed the case. The people in the governor's manor all said this. They all saw Governor Qin leaving. The Liefire Empyrean's expression changed. Could it be that he was mistaken? He believed that the people of the governor's manor wouldn't be so bold as to lie to him together. If this was the case, they would be able to find out with a simple investigation. The people of the governor's manor wouldn't be so foolish. It was actually not Qin Wentian. When he thought of this, the Liefire Empyrean's expression softened a little. If it wasn't Qin Wentian, things would still be fine. At the very least, Qin Wentian didn't challenge his bottom line. Palace Lord, although it's best not to disturb Governor Qin if there's nothing important, I believe that if Palace Lord summons him, Governor Qin will definitely return to meet with you. That attendant bowed. The Liefire Empyrean fell silent for a moment before he replied, There's no need. Since Governor Qin has something important to do, let him handle his own matters first. Chapter 1643. 4 hours ago, Qin Wentian was still in the governor's manor and left after that. In that case, the person who killed the Jalan monarch couldn't be Qin Wentian. If he didn't use the teleportation array in the Jalan Emperor Palace as well as the Liefire Palace's teleportation array, it was impossible for Qin Wentian to return in such a short period of time. Also, even if he managed to enter the teleportation array in the Jalan Emperor Palace, what about the Liefire Palace's teleportation array? Since so many people saw it at the same time, there was no way this could be faked. They could already eliminate the suspicion of Qin Wentian. The Liefire Empyrean's heart also relaxed a little. Maybe, it wasn't a vendetta. Someone was simply too arrogant and wanted to challenge the Liefire Palace's prestige, hence killing the Jalan monarch. The people of the Jalan clan were also puzzled. Could it be that the culprit really wasn't Qin Wentian? Their first thought was, could it be that the Liefire Empyrean was protecting Qin Wentian? But this thought was soon overturned. If it really was Qin Wentian, given the current relationship between the Liefire Empyrean and Qin Wentian, the Liefire Empyrean wouldn't hesitate to kill Qin Wentian. Killing the Jalan monarch not only concerned the Jalan clan, it was also challenging the Liefire Empyrean's bottom line. It's fine if Qin Wentian isn't here yet. What do the few of you think about this matter? The Liefire Empyrean glanced at the other governors. Naturally, his question was merely an act. He ordered his subordinates to gather the governors because he wanted to see if Qin Wentian was in the governor's manor or not. Palace Lord, no matter who it is, it's already extremely brazen to dare to kill the monarch of our Liefire Palace. We have to investigate this thoroughly, and after we capture those bandits, we have to execute them in public to shock the world. If not, if other bandits imitate us in the future, where would the prestige of our Liefire Palace be? The new governor, Sun Qian, spoke. Naturally, there was nothing more to say now. Zhuge Xiong, what do you think? The Liefire Empyrean glanced at Zhuge Xiong. Did the bandits leave any clues behind? Zhuge Xiong's eyes gleamed as he looked at the person who came to report. There aren't any clues left behind. We only know the attributes they are good at. Just based on this, it's like looking for a needle in a haystack. That person replied. In the supreme ancient immortal realms, there were simply too many experts. It was unknown how many people were proficient in the same law attribute. Unless one coincidentally encountered the other party and saw the combat style of the other party, only then would they be able to recognize the other party. However, such an opportunity was basically impossible. Palace Lord, they committed such a huge crime, robbing so many minds. There's a high possibility that this is the only time they would appear. If they don't appear again in the future, it would be like searching for a needle in a haystack if we want to find them. We have no clues at all. If we want to break through, we can only act from within the group of bandits. Zhuge Xiong reported to the Li-Fire Empyrean. What should we do exactly? The Li-Fire Empyrean glanced at Zhuge Xiong. Split up. The one who killed the monarch is only the bandit leader. There's no need for us to kill all of them. We can spread the news that as long as it's not the bandit leader, as long as one of them comes forward to surrender, we will give them great rewards and we won't pursue this matter. In this case, it's enough if one of them comes forward to surrender. We can then use this chance to dig out the others. Zhuge Xiong spoke. The Li-Fire Empyrean frowned. Could it be that we won't pursue this matter if they come forward to surrender? And even give them great rewards? Palace Lord, it's just that our Li-Fire Palace won't pursue this matter. Zhuge Xiong had a deep look in his eyes. He even intentionally glanced at the people from the Jialan clan, causing the eyes of everyone to flash. As expected of Zhuge Xiong, he was truly ruthless enough. The Li-Fire Palace wouldn't pursue this matter, but if he wanted someone to die, it was simply too easy. But would they be so foolish as to take the risk? Someone from the Jialan clan asked. Hence, we have to give them great rewards. Also, we have to release news that will make them believe us and move their hearts. Zhuge Xiong spoke. Fine, we will hand this matter over to the Grand Governor. The other governors will cooperate and investigate this matter. As for those who are present today, none of you are allowed to leak out any information. The Li-Fire Empyrean coldly swept his gaze over everyone, causing their hearts to tremble as they nodded. Not long after, everyone dispersed. However, the Li-Fire Palace was still enveloped in a heavy atmosphere. The Jialan clan was the same as well. After they brought the Jialan monarch's corpse back, the entire Jialan clan was filled with a heavy atmosphere. Zhuge Xiong received orders to investigate this matter. He personally headed to Jialan Emperor City and spread the news that the bandit leader of the Heavenly Meteor Mine was extremely brazen, even killing a monarch was an unpardonable crime. Before the bandit leader was captured, as long as there were other bandits who came to surrender themselves, not only would they not be punished for their crimes, they would even be rewarded with 3 high-grade Emperor-ranked weapons and 3,000 high-grade Emperor stones. They would also be given a courtyard in Li-Fire City protected by the Li-Fire Palace. This news caused a huge commotion. This was the first time they heard of bandits receiving such preferential treatment. This was simply strange. The first thing the crowd thought of was that this was a conspiracy. But even if it was a conspiracy, the Li-Fire Palace could still give such an order. From this, one could see how angry the Li-Fire Empyrean was. They didn't even care about face and wanted to capture the bandit leader no matter what. After all, a monarch was killed. There were also a small number of people who guessed that this might be true. The Li-Fire Empyrean personally gave the order, there shouldn't be any falsehood. Maybe, the Li-Fire Empyrean really wanted to find the bandit leader and execute him in public. However, they didn't have any clues and had no choice but to use this method. Qin Wentian was the target of suspicion. However, he clearly knew that the Li-Fire Palace naturally wouldn't be able to find out anything. In fact, it was very possible that they would never be able to find out anything. Even if those bandits really surrendered themselves because of their foolishness or greed, so what of it? Those bandits simply didn't know who their leader was. Although they had seen the face of the bandit leader, it was a deliberate disguise. It was a disguise that the bandit leader had used to disguise his appearance. In fact, even his aura was fake. How could they possibly find out who he was? As for who the killer of the Jialan monarch was, their suspicions weren't wrong. The killer was none other than Qin Wentian. When he was in Heavenly City, he received news from Princess Kitamura and learned of Yi Qianyu's encounter in the lifelong Saint Hall. After that, he also saw that Princess Kitamura was also imprisoned there. The flames of hatred from back then instantly ignited in his heart. If it wasn't for the Jialan monarch, everything wouldn't have happened. Yu Huang wouldn't have been trapped so deeply, from the Jialan Emperor City to the Lifefire Palace, and then to the lifelong Saint Hall. Yi Qianyu wouldn't have been imprisoned in the Lifefire jail for tens of years and even placed under house arrest in the lifelong Saint Hall, suffering humiliation and being used as a dancer. Based on the relationship between him and Yi Qianyu had only danced for him once, and that was on the cold lake in Jialan Emperor City. No matter what the Jialan clan did, the Jialan monarch was destined to die no matter what. Under a fit of rage, Qin Wendian gathered some people and directly acted, killing the Jialan monarch in the Skyfall mine, settling this grudge. As for the figure that appeared in the governor's manor, it was naturally to prove that he didn't kill the Jialan monarch. At that time, he was still in the governor's manor. That figure naturally couldn't be Qin Wendian's true self. It was Di Tian. It was extremely easy for Di Tian to appear in the governor's manor. As long as he changed into a set of white robes and sealed his aura, there would be no difference between him and Qin Wendian after he took off his mask. His reason for leaving was naturally very simple. It was impossible for him to go to the Lifefire Palace to confront the Jialan monarch. He could easily hide from his subordinates in the governor's manor. In fact, those people wouldn't even dare to use their immortal senses to probe his aura. But if he went to the Lifefire Palace, there would be a risk of him being exposed. Hence, he directly said that he had something to do and that if there was nothing major, don't look for him. He believed that as long as the Lifefire Empyrean knew that he had just left the governor's manor and that there were many witnesses, as well as the words he left behind, the Lifefire Empyrean wouldn't look for him. Right now, the Lifefire Empyrean was still very polite to him. Since the Jialan monarch's death had nothing to do with him, was there any meaning in forcefully summoning him to the Lifefire Palace? This move could be said to be crossing the sea with the heavens. As long as no one knew that Qin Wendian was Di Tian, no one would ever know that he was the one who killed the Jialan monarch. As long as he didn't kill the Jialan monarch, the Lifefire Empyrean would continue to be polite to him, maintaining their previous relationship. Hence, Qin Wendian basically didn't need to care about how the Jialan monarch's death would affect him. Over at Lifefire City, Di Tian was still keeping an eye on things. Right now, the Emperor Pavilion was a hegemonic power in Lifefire City that was second only to the Jialan clan. In fact, because they weren't restricted by the Lifefire Palace, they even had signs of surpassing the Jialan clan. In the blink of an eye, several months had already passed since the Jialan monarch's death. In the lifelong realm, other than the 9 world palaces, the lifelong Saint Hall also controlled a vast region. This region had lifelong city as the center, and was the core of the entire lifelong realm. This region was under the direct control of the lifelong Saint Hall. In this region, there were 8 most famous mines in the lifelong realm. The Taotai mine was one of the 8 mines controlled by the lifelong Saint Hall. It was a true supreme-grade mine and there would often be terrifying treasures appearing there. The lifelong Saint Hall would directly guard it. In fact, the 8 mines were connected to the lifelong Saint Hall through spatial teleportation arrays. For countless years, no one dared to come here to steal from them. If such a situation really happened, it would mean that someone wanted to challenge the lifelong Realm Lord's position. Also, the miners of these 8 mines were all at least at the Empyrean realm. Also, they weren't slaves or criminals. They were true experts who came here willingly. Because, although these mines were dangerous, they contained boundless good fortune. As long as there was a small harvest, it would be sufficient for an immortal emperor to squander it for many years. Even if they could only obtain 10% of the harvest, this mine would still attract some extremely powerful characters. Over here, there were opportunities to pry into the realm above the immortal emperor realm. At this moment, Qin Wendian appeared outside the Taotai mine. He stared at the majestic mountain range before him as he walked forward step by step. It was rumored that the Taotai mine was one of the 8 great mines of the lifelong Saint Hall. All sorts of rare treasures could be found there. In fact, there were even many types of treasures that could surpass emperor-level stones. Hence, he came here. For the sake of cultivating faster and coming into contact with the Empyrean realm, he had to take risks. Chapter 1644. Indeed, You are ignorant and inexperienced. Yi Lian laughed, calmly glancing at Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian smiled and nodded in response. He didn't mind it at all. Not long after, they arrived at that place. There was an incomparably resplendent golden mountain range that was incomparably majestic. In the distance, many experts could be seen. They were either standing with their eyes closed or sitting cross-legged. All of them seemed to be in a state of comprehension. I didn't expect to be able to meet Brother Shan here. I still remember during the banquet 2 years ago, Brother Shan represented the Sky Air Palace and obtained the #1 position in the commander battle. After that, you resigned from your position and disappeared without a trace. It's truly my fortune to be able to meet you here. That arrogant leader of the 4 palaces politely clasped his hands and spoke. Clearly, he knew of Shan Lingqiu's name. The group of them respectively walked towards the mine, with Shan Lingqiu in the center. Murong Xiaoxiao unknowingly walked to his side. Is there no one guarding the airspace above this mine? Qin Wentian asked. Taotai Mine. Murong Xiaoxiao mumbled. After that, a smile appeared on her face as she spoke to Shan Lingqiu. Brother Shan, my strength is weaker. This mine is filled with danger. If I follow you, you have to protect me. Yi Qing and Yi Lian glanced at Qin Wentian. Yi Lian's eyes flashed with disdain. Although he was a peak-stage immortal emperor, an unaffiliated cultivator was still an unaffiliated cultivator. He actually didn't even know this. She then glanced at Shan Lingqiu, feeling that the disparity between them was too great. It's just that this woman Murong Xiaoxiao was truly shameless enough, she actually chose to follow him. The lifelong realm was simply too vast, so vast that it was boundlessly vast. Just lifelong city alone already had many empyrean powers. Let alone the boundless lifelong realm, there were many other major powers hidden within. Although world overlords who stood at the peak were extremely rare, there would definitely be many powers on the same level as palace lords. In the middle of the vast mine, there was a huge piece of flat land. This place was the entrance to the mine. At this moment, more and more people came here. Qin Wentian was among them. There were many experts around him, all of them were immortal emperors. They were either alone or in groups of 2 or 3. Occasionally, sounds of discussion could be heard. Seeing that everyone was tempted, the young man smiled and said, "This is the Taotai Mine, one of the 8 great mines. Having one more friend will increase our chances of success. The 4 of you should be disciples of major powers, right?" The people who just arrived all shook their heads. After that, the guard pointed to the front and said, "If you continue forward, you will reach the entrance of the Taotai Mine. I'm sure everyone here understands the rules of the Taotai Mine. You can enter and exit at any time, please do as you please." What was even more relaxed was that the Taotai Mine did not have to hand over all of its ores on a fixed schedule. Instead, they could come out at any time and hand over all of the ores that they had dug out. Afterward, they would be able to obtain 10% of the ores. That's right. With Brother Shan's talent and identity, why did you come to the Taotai Mine? Yi Qing asked. Everyone, please wait a moment. At this moment, a silhouette appeared, causing everyone to stop in their tracks. They turned their heads to look at the person who spoke. It was a young and handsome man. His temperament was extraordinary, and there was a beautiful celestial maiden beside him who bore a striking resemblance to him. Shan Lingqiu calmly nodded. A moment later, the eyes of everyone in the surroundings gleamed with a strange light. Although they were also characters from major powers, their statuses couldn't be compared to Shan Lingqiu, the eldest disciple of the Sky Air Empyrean. Let's go and take a look. Shan Lingqiu's silhouette flashed as he shot out like a bolt of black lightning, speeding towards that direction. The 4 people he spoke to were none other than the group of people Qin Wentian heard earlier. Right. The crowd nodded and continued on their way. Although their cultivation bases were very high, it was unknown how dangerous it was inside. But one thing was for sure, there would definitely be many experts here. The 8 most important mines of the lifelong realm were far more relaxed compared to the other small mines. In addition to the fortuitous encounters hidden within, it attracted experts from all directions to come here unceasingly. This in itself was a kind of strategy. Otherwise, even if there were a lot of fortuitous encounters, if the restrictions were too tight, it would still be very difficult to attract experts to come here to take risks. So much so that some of them came here only for the sake of tempering themselves. Some of them just wanted to broaden their horizons. Are you guys really disciples of the Green Cloud Mountain? The peak stage immortal emperor in the lead asked. But who was the Sky Air Empyrean? The lifelong realm lord. Wait for me. Murong Xiao spoke. The group of them increased their speed. Yi Lian's beautiful eyes involuntarily glanced at Murong Xiao, as though she found her to be an eyesore. Brother Shan, for the sake of pursuing that cultivation realm, you can even give up your status as a monarch. How admirable. Murong Xiao's voice was gentle as she smiled. The group of them continued forward and finally entered the teleportation array. In an instant, they traversed a boundless distance and arrived above a mine. This mine was like an incomparably gigantic constellation, boundless and boundless. They stood in the air and felt incomparably tiny, only able to see a small portion of this mine. I didn't expect that I would be able to get acquainted with a disciple of the clan of the Green Cloud Mountain and a genius from the 4 palaces of the desolate ground here. My name is Murong Xiao. A solitary fairy smiled. She was radiant and gentle, her smile was like a crescent moon, exuding a pure beauty. However, given her cultivation base and the fact that she was an unaffiliated cultivator, how could one only look at the surface? Yi Qing, a disciple of the Green Cloud Mountain. This is my younger sister, Yi Lian. The young man smiled and nodded. Brother Tianwen, you might not know this, but the Taotai mine contains a terrifying Taotai energy that can devour the heavens and earth. In the airspace above the Taotai mine, a fearsome spatial tempest was formed, filled with all sorts of destructive auras. Let alone immortal emperors, even transcendents wouldn't be able to leave this place. They can only leave through the exit. Yi Qing smiled as he introduced. Fairy Murong. Yi Qing smiled and nodded to Murong Xiao. The people from the desolate ground palace also nodded to her. Sky Air Empyrean Palace, Shan Lingqiu. The last person was clad in black. His tone was filled with coldness. Even though this was a disciple of the clan from the Green Cloud Mountain and the geniuses from the Desolate Ground Palace, there was no way for him to be polite to them. The Desolate Ground Palace? Yi Qing's eyes gleamed with sharpness as he asked. The other party nodded. As expected of one of the 8 great minds of the lifelong realm. Most of the people who came here should be experts from the hegemonic powers. Qin Wendian silently mused. These hegemonic powers were similar to the Sword Spirit sect and Jialan clan, having palace lords. Qin Wendian followed behind. His countenance was incomparably calm, his heart like still water. He didn't expect that he would be able to casually encounter the Sky Air Palace Lord in the Taotai Mine, a grand disciple of the lifelong realm. This place was truly a place with crouching tigers and hidden dragons. Disciples of the Yi clan. The eyes of the peak stage immortal emperor in the lead flashed. After that, he nodded lightly. Since this is the case, let's form an alliance then. We are from the Desolate Ground Palace. Everyone, if you want to enter the mine, you have to allow us to inspect all your interspatial rings with our immortal sense. If there are any inconvenient items, you all can leave them behind after you return. At the registration area of the Taotai mine, a guard reminded. Everyone naturally understood this point. Every mine had such a rule. If they didn't check the interspatial rings on you, how would they know if you are hiding something? Hence, if you have any treasures or secret items, you wouldn't bring them with you. A powerful female immortal emperor, right now, was like a little girl, extremely gentle. Shan Lingqiu glanced at her and nodded. You can leave now. Shan Lingqiu, are you the eldest disciple of the Sky Air Palace Lord? Grand disciple of the Realm Lord? Yi Qing's eyes flashed with sharpness as he stared at Shan Lingqiu. This is spatial energy, but it doesn't seem to be pure spatial energy. Qin Wentian stared ahead at the majestic golden mountain that resembled a translucent ancient peak. Within it, there were some scattered silhouettes. All of them had deathly expressions on their faces and were as thin as firewood. It was as though they had been trapped inside for countless years. Senior brother, given your talent and cultivation base, you might really have a chance to break through to the immortal emperor realm, transcending mortality and entering sainthood. At this moment, a voice drifted over from the side. It was actually a group of immortal emperor-level martial brothers. The weakest among them was at the mid-stage of the immortal emperor realm, while the strongest among them exuded a terrifying aura. Clearly, they were already standing at the peak of the immortal emperor realm and were here to search for good fortune to break through. Us siblings are disciples of the Green Cloud Mountain. I'm sure everyone knows the dangers of entering the Taotai mine. Not only is there a threat from the Taotai mine itself, there's also the threat from the various experts inside. Even if we manage to find the mine, we might not be able to snatch it away from them. Hence, every batch of people who entered the mine would form an alliance. There are 9 of us, why don't we form an alliance? The young man slowly spoke. What he said was the truth. Many batches of people who entered the mine would form an alliance. What a powerful spatial law energy. Qin Wentian mused in a low voice. What's that? At this moment, Murong Xiaoxiao turned her gaze towards the distance. Over there seemed to be a golden ancient mountain towering over there. Incomparably resplendent light cascaded down from the sky, cascading down on them, giving the ancient mountain a layer of holy light. The group of people continued on their way. Occasionally, Emperor light would appear below, but they would only casually glance at it before continuing on their way. Ordinary Emperor stones couldn't even enter their eyes. The Taotai mine could be entered at any time. As long as one's cultivation base met the requirements of the immortal Emperor realm, they would be able to enter and mine. It's me who is ignorant and inexperienced. Thank you for your guidance. Qin Wentian thanked I Ching. Before that cultivation base, what's the point of having the identity of a monarch or governor? Shan Lingqiu spoke in a low voice. Let's go. Unaffiliated cultivator, Tianwen. Qin Wentian smiled and nodded, not revealing his true identity. Everyone calmly glanced at Qin Wentian. Their attitude towards Qin Wentian was no longer as friendly as Murong Xiaoxiao. Beauties would always have an advantage. Chapter 1645. This isn't spatial energy. As the sound of Qin Wentian's voice faded, Shan Lingqiu calmly replied. He stared at the majestic golden mountain ahead. This is world energy. The eyes of everyone gleamed with sharpness. That's right, this was the energy that many of them wanted to find and come into contact with. World energy. Qin Wentian's gaze sharpened as he stared ahead. Was this world energy that truly existed? In addition, it had materialized here. The transcending Emperor's stone mine was right before their eyes. This could even be considered world stones. At the Emperor realm, one would be able to comprehend the law domain to the extreme, fusing different laws together to create a powerful law domain. However, what should they do next? When one's comprehension of law energy reached the extreme, they would be able to comprehend the origin of law energy. At that time, cultivators would be able to fuse their will into their law domain. Their law intent would be their will, their heavenly will would be their will. From there, they would be able to fuse their law energy together, creating a brand new energy. This energy was known as world energy. This kind of energy had already surpassed the boundaries of law domains. It was a qualitative transformation, a true qualitative change. When a brand new energy fuses together, your law intent would also fuse into it. That energy would become a part of you. Stellar martial cultivators themselves represented the will of heaven and earth. Hence, they were truly extraordinary existences. They weren't merely immortals who used their own laws, they were existences that transcended immortality, achieving freedom. Hence, there were countless immortal emperors in the lifelong realm. However, how many world overlords were there? Currently, Qin Wentian only knew of 2. One was the lifelong realm lord, and the other was Yi from back then. This step must be as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Countless extraordinary characters might spend their entire lives, but even when they died, they still couldn't reach that level. Let alone world overlords, they couldn't even reach the realm between immortal emperors and world overlords. There were extremely few people at that level. In the boundlessly vast lifelong realm, those who could step into that realm would all be able to become palace lords or establish a peak power. From this, one could very well imagine how powerful they were. After Qin Wendian entered the supreme ancient immortal realms, it was naturally impossible for him to not understand this information. He had once read ancient records, and there were records of the 33 immortal realms they lived in. Why was the supreme ancient immortal realms formed? Why was there a world? Why was this world so balanced? There were all sorts of laws that naturally fused together. World overlords already had the qualifications to come into contact with that level. The more stellar martial cultivators grew, the closer they would get to the truth, closer to the essence of the world. Brother Shan saw through world energy with a single glance. As expected of the senior disciple of the Sky Air Empyrean. Most probably, you aren't too far away from that level. Murong Xiaoxiao smiled. Shan Lingqiu shook his head, I'm still too far away. I believe that Brother Shan will be able to step into that realm sooner or later. Perhaps in this Taotai mine, you will be able to comprehend the level of a palace master. Murong Xiaoxiao continued, I don't know much about the formation of the boundary stone, can Brother Shan explain it to me? Yes. Shan Lingqiu calmly nodded. I was once fortunate enough to listen to my ancestor's lecture on the Tao. He said that there are 9 astral rivers in the world, containing countless constellations. In truth, these 9 astral rivers all correspond to our cultivation bases. The higher the astral river, the more terrifying the power contained in the constellations. But because the cultivators who sensed it are restricted by their cultivation base, in addition to the boundless distance between them and the constellations, they have no way to truly sense the true power of the constellations. What they can sense is only the power they can absorb. Qin Wentian's eyes flashed when he heard Shan Lingqiu's words. He already had this suspicion in his heart. The higher one's constellation was in the 9 heavenly layers, the more extraordinary it would be. But even for constellations at the first heavenly layer, they contained boundless law energy within them. If not, for some immortal cultivators, if they tried to condense a constellation at the lowest level before, would their constellations be crippled? Naturally not. When one's cultivation base is higher, the amount of energy they can absorb would naturally be different. These mines are actually all gigantic meteors in the starry space or small constellations that were formed naturally. Although I have no idea how this Taotai mine was formed, it must have experienced the passage of countless years. As the saying goes, water droplets can penetrate a rock. Under the accumulation of time, everything would change from quantitative to qualitative. Mines of laws would be the same as stellar martial cultivators, gradually giving birth to source origin energy and law intent. When 2 different source origin energies exist together for countless years, their law intents would fuse together, and from there, a brand new type of energy would be born, giving birth to world stone mines. You are saying that this mine has its own consciousness? Murong Xiaoxiao asked. Law intent isn't self-consciousness. There are laws in heaven and earth, and that is what we usually refer to as heaven's will. However, it is illusory, yet it truly exists. It isn't like humans or demonic beasts, they can't think. Shan Lingqiu explained. Murong Xiaoxiao's beautiful eyes flashed with a bright light. She smiled, Brother Shan, you are truly too awesome. After hearing your words, I feel that I'm about to gain enlightenment. Incisive. The Yi siblings nodded as well. Qin Wentian had a look of contemplation on his face. Although Murong Xiaoxiao's words were filled with flattery, Shan Lingqiu's words truly caused one to feel enlightened. Humans often said that heaven's will is hard to fathom, heaven's will is hard to defy. Using Shan Lingqiu's words to explain it, it was very logical. Heaven's will was a type of law intent born from heaven and earth. It didn't have the ability to think and was originally illusory, it was naturally hard to fathom. As for humans, they were the spirits of all living things. When humans comprehended that type of energy, their self-consciousness would fuse into that energy, forming the law intent. You would then represent the will of heaven and earth. Heaven's will is my will. How tyrannical is that? These are all superficial things. The world stone before us should be formed from the fusion of the law intent of space and the law intent of earth, giving birth to a brand new type of law intent, transforming from law energy to world energy. Those people are trapped inside and most probably, they would never be able to come out again. Shan Lingqiu stared at the group of figures on the mountain peak as he spoke. The eyes of these people all turned lifeless, they must have experienced a painful struggle. This place isn't suitable for us. Only experts at the World Overlord realm would be able to comprehend this type of energy. We are still some distance away from them. Shan Lingqiu continued. Amicham, I will listen to you. Murong Xiao nodded. Although the group of them felt that this world mountain was mystical, they also understood that it wasn't suitable for them to comprehend and cultivate here. The distance between them and this place was too far. The group of them continued forward and found another extraordinary place. This was a sword river that flowed down from the sky. It was like a waterfall that flowed downwards unceasingly, flowing into the earth. However, there was a region where the sword river flowed past that transformed into a bottomless abyss. It was unknown if this abyss had reached the core of the Taotai mine or not. This sword river was too terrifying. If one stood below it, only death would await them. The sword intent is still there, it hasn't fused together yet. This sword intent is very close to the origin source of law energy. Shan Lingqiu sat cross-legged and directly closed his eyes to comprehend. Murong Xiao started when she saw this scene. After that, she smiled sweetly and sat down beside Shan Lingqiu. Qin Wentian also found a good spot. He didn't sit down and merely stood there, quietly watching. His white robes fluttered in the wind as his long hair fluttered in the wind. The law energy of the sword also had a myriad of forms. It could actually transform into flowing water that flowed according to the flow of the sword energy. There were many people here, all of them were here to comprehend, standing in different locations. For those who came to the Taotai mine, other than for the ores, they also wanted to comprehend and cultivate. There were simply too many opportunities here. Several months later, the group of them were still in the midst of comprehending. Qin Wentian stood alone in a corner, while Murong Xiao would occasionally ask Shan Lingqiu for guidance. Brother Shan, did you comprehend something again? At this moment, Murong Xiao asked when she saw Shan Lingqiu opening his eyes. Shan Lingqiu nodded lightly. Murong Xiao then asked, Brother Shan, I wish to consult you. This sword river is like flowing water, gentle but not hard. However, the sword intent is extremely tough and powerful. Can swords really become gentle and have no killing intent? Naturally, it can't. If a sword intent loses its sharpness, can it still be called a sword intent? Shan Lingqiu spoke. Swordsmen should be extremely sharp. Although the sword river before us is gentle, it's actually extremely tough and yang. If one enters it, they would instantly die. The so-called gentleness is merely a facade. Not far away, Qin Wentian's expression changed when he heard Shan Lingqiu's words. In truth, he had been thinking about this question during these few days. However, he had a different understanding from Shan Lingqiu and he could use this opportunity to discuss it. Hence, he spoke, I have a different opinion. The law intent can take on a myriad of forms. For sword attribute swords, there's an extremely tough and yang intent. This is something bestowed by the law attribute itself. However, sword intent can also be gentle, like flowing water brushing past one's body. Murong Xiao inclined her head and smiled at Qin Wentian. She didn't expect him to speak at this moment. Shan Lingqiu frowned when he was refuted by Qin Wentian. He calmly spoke, have you seen a sword that can't kill? I have. Qin Wentian nodded. When we control the sword intent in our body, why wouldn't it injure us? Fallacy. Shan Lingqiu's voice turned cold. How can the energy we control hurt ourselves? What kind of example is this? It's simply nonsense. The so-called law intent is to infuse one's own will into one's energy. This is what you said earlier. Since this is the case, when we enter a higher realm, heaven's will would become our will. We would be able to control it with ease and not injure ourselves. Similarly, we wouldn't be able to harm others. Right now, we are unable to do so because our cultivation bases aren't high enough. Qin Wentian's tone was as calm as ever. This was his opinion. Although it was the same as comprehending, different people would naturally have different insights. Have you seen people with a higher cultivation base doing this before? Shan Lingqiu mocked, his eyes were filled with mockery. Brother Shan is the eldest disciple of the Sky Air Palace Lord, a grand disciple of the Realm Lord. You have heard the Realm Lord's Tao lectures before. Murong Xiaoxiao giggled. There's a difference in comprehending the Tao. I'm merely stating my opinion. Also, I stand by my opinion. Qin Wentian laughed. In that case, you feel that although you comprehended the Tao later, you have comprehended the Tao before me? Shan Lingqiu's voice was sharp as a terrifying sword intent gushed forth. Since this is the case, why don't you spar with me and we will know? Brother Shan, this is merely a Tao discussion. Brother Tianwen is merely stating his opinion. There's no need to harm the harmony between us. Yi Qing persuaded, faintly feeling that Qin Wentian's words were logical. However, he naturally wouldn't say this out loud. Chapter 1646. Qin Wentian glanced at Shan Lingqiu. He smiled. When they formed the alliance, he already understood that the so-called alliance was merely a way for the weak to protect themselves by relying on the strong. Such an alliance was extremely fragile before benefits. When they formed the alliance, because of Shan Lingqiu's identity, everyone in the alliance was fawning over him. This Shan Lingqiu himself was also an extraordinary character, and in addition to his identity, he was naturally extremely proud. Hence, when Shan Lingqiu raised a different opinion, he treated it as a provocation and suggested a spar. Qin Wentian calmly shook his head. He stared ahead and didn't say anything more. His pride wasn't like Shan Lingqiu's, he couldn't tolerate the different opinions of others. He had his own comprehensions, and if Shan Lingqiu also insisted on his point of view, what did that have to do with him? Could it be that if someone had a different opinion, he would have to spar with them to prove that he was right? Naturally, the reason why Shan Lingqiu would act this way was because he viewed himself too highly. If he knew that Tianwen was none other than Qin Wentian, he might be able to tolerate Tianwen's different opinions. Now that he was angered, it was only because he felt that Qin Wentian didn't have the qualifications to question his comprehensions in public. This was especially so in front of a beauty. Even if Shan Lingqiu didn't display too much passion for Murong Xiaoxiao, being admired by a beauty would still be able to satisfy his vanity. He naturally wouldn't want to lose face. Brother Shan, how can he spar with you? Why do you care about his opinion? Yi Lian spoke at this moment. As for the other four from the 4 desolate palaces, they fell silent and watched quietly. At the same time, they were pondering over the words spoken by Qin Wentian and Shan Lingqiu earlier. From the surface, it seemed that Shan Lingqiu was right. However, if one pondered deeply, Qin Wentian's words weren't wrong. Since humans could control their own energy without harming themselves, did this mean that energy itself was controllable? There was no absolute. Could the true origin source of law exist in many different forms? The more one thought about it, the more they would feel a trace of comprehension. It was just that they had no way to grasp it. Even so, they still wouldn't express their support for Qin Wentian. The Sword River continued flowing. In the depths of the abyss ahead, sword intent could be faintly felt, flowing against the current. This caused the gazes of everyone to stiffen as their immortal senses probed the depths of the abyss. In an instant, the eyes of many narrowed as someone exclaimed in shock, "There's someone there." Someone actually appeared in the abyss. Numerous sharp gazes turned downwards, only to see a silhouette slowly ascending. The Sword River flowed against the current, converging with the Sword River that was flowing downwards. After that, the sword river shot out in all directions. Puchi! A crisp sound rang out. One of them lowered his head and stared at his chest. There, numerous holes could be seen. It was as though a stream of water had flowed through his body, leaving behind these holes. After which, fresh blood flowed out of the holes, resembling flowing water. Ah! That person let out a miserable howl as he retreated explosively. In an instant, numerous silhouettes hurriedly retreated with fear on their faces. The sword chi river that was like water splashing in all directions seemed gentle and formless, yet it contained a terrifying destructive power. This seemed to prove Shan Lingqiu's words earlier. Maybe the form of a sword could be changed, but the innate essence of a sword was incomparably sharp. There was no sword that wouldn't kill. However, when they stared at the silhouette that appeared in the abyss again, this conclusion seemed to be overturned. Qin Wentian's words seemed to be correct. That person was immersed in the sword river and didn't use any energy to resist it. The sword river flowed through his body slowly, resembling real water droplets, terrifying to the extreme. Is this the sword intent he released himself? Shan Lingqiu retreated as he spoke. However, he felt that he was lying to himself. That sword intent was clearly something that was naturally formed, a product of the Taotai mine. It was an external source of power, but when your cultivation base was strong enough, it seemed that you could really change its form, causing the sword to become gentler. Seems like one would be able to do this after comprehending the origin of laws. Qin Wentian mumbled. He glanced at Shan Lingqiu. In that case, the Sky Air Empyrean would be able to do this as well. Didn't he tell you about this before? Shan Lingqiu's expression stiffened as his countenance grew increasingly unsightly. Yeah, sometimes, you have to comprehend it yourself. Only then would it truly be yours. If I told you directly, you might end up in a predicament. Although you know about it, you wouldn't be able to comprehend it. Since that's the case, you might as well comprehend it directly. I'm sure the Sky Air Empyrean must have told you many times to sense his strength, right? Qin Wentian sighed. His tone was calm, he didn't exude any arrogance. He was contemplating in his heart as he immersed himself in his own insights. Shut up. Shan Lingqiu coldly spoke. Qin Wentian started, but he didn't say anything more. Murong Xiaoxiao was stunned, but she still had a smile on her face. She stared at Shan Lingqiu. The truth might not be what we see. I still believe that you are right. This was purely words of flattery. Shan Lingqiu nodded to Murong Xiaoxiao. His proud and vain heart would feel more comfortable only by doing this. Qin Wentian no longer looked at Shan Lingqiu. He was staring at the person who appeared from the abyss. That person was actually squatting there and was sharpening his sword. He placed the sword on the grindstone, allowing the boundless sword chi river to flow on it, causing the surface of the sword to be as smooth as ever. His long hair was in an extremely disheveled state, resembling a madman. He was clad in black robes that were stained with countless bloodstains. His robes were also extremely tattered. He had been sharpening his sword, there were no distractions in his heart. Finally, he inclined his head as a terrifying cold light gleamed in his eyes, incomparably resplendent. That gaze seemed to contain a supreme sword intent that could lacerate everything, penetrating through everything. 1,000 years of sharpening a sword. Today, the sword has been completed. A sharp voice rang out from his mouth. After that, the grindstone fell from the air. He picked up the sword with his palm, and with a wave of his hand, the sword that he had sharpened for 1,000 years was directly destroyed by him. 1,000 years of sharpening a sword, the sword was completed, all for the sake of destruction. During these 1,000 years, was he sharpening that sword, or was he sharpening his own sword? With a flash of his silhouette, he transformed into a beam of light, resembling a sword. His body was the sword. With a piercing sound, blood splattered out. A figure didn't even have the time to scream before his head was separated from his body. That sword light continued to fly out at the speed of a meteor, like a sword ray. Puff 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 sounds continuously rang out, and one figure after another was slain, directly falling on the spot. Seeing this scene, the crowd was shocked, and their expressions changed. Emperors' might erupted from their bodies, and at the same time, they rapidly retreated. Law origin, is this the law intent of swords? Qin Wentian's heart trembled. What a powerful might! He saw a peak-stage immortal emperor using an extremely powerful defense, manifesting a law domain and creating an indestructible space. However, his defense was directly penetrated by the sword intent, slaying him. There were also experts who used their divine weapons to protect themselves, blocking in front of them. However, the sword light directly disintegrated and flowed along their divine weapons, passing through their divine weapons in an instant, entering the side of their body and killing them. There was no way to block it at all. This expert who walked out from the abyss should already be someone who stood at the unrivaled level in the immortal emperor realm. In fact, he might have already come into contact with the empyreans of the 9 world palaces. 1,000 years of sharpening a sword. After he appeared, he directly used others to test his sword. This person's cultivation speed was almost crazy. In his eyes, there was only his sword. So many experts here were merely objects for him to sharpen his sword and not lives. He was truly emotionless to the extreme. Could this be the so-called, the great Tao is emotionless? Shan Lingqiu and the others were also retreating. Murong Xiaoxiao was hiding behind Shan Lingqiu. The group of them retreated with Shan Lingqiu in the center while radiating terrifying emperor light. That beam of sword light transformed into a human again. He smiled and glanced at everyone before turning to Shan Lingqiu and the others. Shan Lingqiu's expression drastically changed. A terrifying aura gushed forth from him as sword light flashed resplendently. With a single sword strike, boundless light seemed to be able to slash apart the heavens and earth as it shot towards his opponent. However, that madman continued moving forward, as though he didn't care at all. When Shan Lingqiu's sword intent landed on his opponent, the sword intent actually became incomparably gentle, flowing through his body. At this moment, Shan Lingqiu's countenance turned pale. At the same time, this also proved that he was wrong. When one was strong enough, they would be able to change the rules. Using the power of the sword to attack that madman is simply courting death. Not far away, Qin Wentian instantly understood when he saw this scene. This expert who came out from the abyss had comprehended the origin source of the sword. This was a qualitative change, directly suppressing you in terms of comprehension. How could your sword Dao still be able to attack him? You were directly suppressed. This was an absolute suppression of comprehension. You also understand the sword? That madman mocked. A moment later, boundless sword might flowed in reverse, landing on Shan Lingqiu. It was like flowing water, flowing through Shan Lingqiu's body. Shan Lingqiu's body trembled unceasingly, his eyes were filled with boundless terror. Senior, I'm a disciple of the Sky Air Palace Lord, the grandson of the lifelong Realm Lord. I hope that Senior can show mercy. In the face of danger, Shan Lingqiu directly admitted defeat, revealing his background. This caused the eyes of the madman to flash. The lifelong Realm Lord's grand disciple. This Tao Tai mine was still under the jurisdiction of the lifelong Realm Lord. In addition, it was also in the territory of the lifelong realm. If he really offended the lifelong Realm Lord, even if his cultivation base improved greatly now, only death would await him. Since this is the case, let me teach you a lesson on behalf of the lifelong Realm Lord. In the future, you better focus on your cultivation. That madman coldly spoke. A moment later, boundless sword might envelop Shan Lingqiu's body and tossed him down. His sword intent was his will, he could control it according to his will. Shan Lingqiu was tossed onto the ground, his entire body was drenched in sweat. If it wasn't for the protection of his identity, he would have died with a single thought from this madman. Chapter 1647. Are you guys also the grand disciples of the Realm Lord? That madman turned his gaze to Murong Xiaoxiao and the others. Before this, these people had always been together with Shan Lingqiu. Hence, he asked this question. If they were really the grand disciples of the Realm Lord, he naturally wouldn't act against them. 1,000 years to sharpen a sword. He had been silent for too long, he had been alone for too long. Now that his sword was formed, he wanted to test it out with his blood and feel the transcendent energy in his body. He felt extremely joyful. Hence, he tossed aside everything, no longer suppressing his impudent heart, and started a massacre. "We are all good friends of Brother Shan." Murong Xiao Xiao and the others spoke. "Is that so?" The madman glanced at Shan Lingqiu only to see Shan Lingqiu shaking his head. "I'm not familiar with them." At this moment, the countenances of Murong Xiao Xiao and the others turned as pale as paper. They stared at Shan Lingqiu in rage. This bastard was actually so heartless, wanting to harm them all. Shan Lingqiu himself almost died. He didn't want to antagonize Qin Wentian anymore. There was no need for him to plead for mercy for these people. Although Murong Xiao Xiao was very beautiful, given his status, he wouldn't lack women. Usually, he wouldn't mind it, but at this moment, he couldn't care so much. Also, he had made a fool of himself today, losing all face. It would be better if these people died. "Brother Shan, aren't your actions a little too despicable?" said someone from the 4 palaces of the desolate ground. However, as the sound of his voice faded, a terrifying stream of sword energy directly pierced through him. In an instant, a bloody mark appeared on his forehead. As soon as the sound of his voice faded, he collapsed to the ground. At the same time, a terrifying sword light chased after those who wanted to escape. His control over the law of swords has already reached a transcendent level. He could do as he pleased. Killing people from 1,000,000 miles away was extremely easy. There was basically no way for them to escape. "Still fleeing?" Sword Madman coldly laughed. His gaze was extremely terrifying. "Senior has already transcended the immortal emperor realm. Why must you make things difficult for us?" I Ching stared at the madman as he spoke. "I like it." That madman laughed. 1,000 years of sharpening a sword. Now that I've finally obtained the Great Tao, how can I not indulge myself? Finally obtained the Great Tao. A voice suddenly rang out. However, comprehending the origin source of the law of swords is equivalent to obtaining the Great Tao? If this is the Great Tao, what is the Realm Lord? This voice was somewhat ear-piercing. Everyone was somewhat astonished. Who would be so daring? They turned their gazes one after another. I Ching and the others actually saw Qin Wentian. They couldn't help but be stunned. This guy actually dared to speak at this time. Was he courting death? The madman also looked at Qin Wentian, revealing a look of interest. There was actually someone who wasn't afraid of death. He smiled and asked, "In your opinion, what is the Great Tao?" Although one has comprehended the origin of the natural order and possesses extraordinary power, the Great Tao is ethereal. Can this be considered comprehending the Great Tao? Now, Senior has given birth to the Dharmic will, and you can use the Dharmic will to control the will of the rules and do as you please. It can even be said that heaven's will is your will, but can it really be done? Qin Wentian spoke. Leaving aside Senior's cultivation base, even for realm lords, they wouldn't be able to represent the Great Tao of heaven and earth, using their own will to represent heaven's will. I thought that the Great Tao will forever be supreme. Unless there comes a day when I can truly reach the state where heaven's will is my will and my will is heaven's will. My will can cause the world to tremble, my will can control the fate of all lives. If Senior truly obtained the Great Tao, why would there be a need for you to use such brutal methods to deal with everyone here? At that time, only then would you truly be able to control the fate of the world. Why would you use cruel killing methods to prove your own accomplishments? This is merely a minor Tao. The smile on the madman's face grew even more intense. He stared at Qin Wentian and laughed. Your comprehension abilities are truly not bad. Before this, you have already comprehended the formless law. Now, I have to admit that your words are logical. I kill people because I want to satisfy my achievement of sharpening my sword for 1,000 years. But so what of it? As long as I like it. Hence, even if what you said is right, I will still kill you. Senior, please enlighten me. Qin Wendian spoke. The madman's gaze froze as he stared at Qin Wendian in astonishment. Please enlighten him. Could it be that Qin Wendian felt that he could fight against him? Seeing the law energy erupting from Qin Wendian, the madman laughed, revealing a row of white teeth, exuding an evil charm. With an intention of his will, a sword river appeared, gushing towards Qin Wendian. That terrifying sword river seemed to want to drown and destroy Qin Wendian completely. Qin Wendian didn't have any sword laws on him. Instead, the Buddhist path's law energy formed an indestructible golden body, transforming into a diamond body that protected his body, impervious to all attacks. The terrifying sword river instantly became extremely sharp, emitting terrifying screeches. However, when it slammed into the Buddhist path's law energy, it was met with a powerful resistance. Although the sword intent continued to corrode, it was unable to directly destroy the Buddhist path's law energy. This was the first time the sword madman encountered such a situation after he sharpened his sword. Killing others would be as easy as blowing off dust. But at this moment, the sword river was actually blocked. The gazes of Murong Xiao and the others froze as they stared in shock at the scene before them. The Buddhist path's law energy was actually able to block the attack of the madman? This Tianwen was actually so powerful. Before this, when the madman acted against Shan Lingqiu, he easily subdued Shan Lingqiu. The difference in strength between Shan Lingqiu and Qin Wendian could be seen with a single glance. However, not long ago, when the two of them discussed the Tao, they had different opinions. Shan Lingqiu was extremely domineering, suggesting a spar while Qin Wendian evaded. At that time, they all thought that Qin Wendian didn't dare to fight. But from the looks of things now, it seemed a little ironic. Shan Lingqiu was clearly wrong and his strength was inferior to Qin Wendian's, yet he was still so domineering. Regardless of strength or comprehension, Qin Wendian was stronger compared to Shan Lingqiu, yet Qin Wendian kept a low profile. Thinking of this, the disparity between the two of them was obvious. Yi Qing and the others coldly glanced at Shan Lingqiu, their gazes filled with mockery. This was truly ironic. They followed Shan Lingqiu but were abandoned by him without any hesitation. On the contrary, it was Qin Wendian who spoke at this moment that temporarily resolved the danger they were in. Shan Lingqiu's expression was extremely unsightly. He who had always been lofty, at this moment, seemed extremely insignificant and petty. When he sensed the disdainful gazes of Yi Qing and the others, his expression contorted. That madman had a look of bewilderment on his face when he saw Qin Wendian's defense. He waved his sword and instantly, boundless sword might manifested, slamming into the Buddhist path Dharma body. These swords were either heavy swords that could shake the heavens or sharp swords that were incomparably sharp. Qin Wendian's Buddhist path Dharma body expanded unceasingly. Countless runes flashed within, intersecting with one another, resembling a grand formation. Layers of energy blocked the attacks but the Buddhist path Dharma body was still shattered. The attacks from the origin source swords were simply too terrifying. Even the golden Vajra body found it hard to endure. One must know that after tens of years of cultivation, Qin Wendian has already broken through to the peak stage of the Immortal Emperor realm. Back then when he was at the mid-stage of the Immortal Emperor realm, he could already defeat many Supreme Peak Stage Empyreans. Given his current cultivation base, Supreme Emperors couldn't even withstand a single strike from him. All of his astral souls were from the 8th heavenly layer. From this, one could very well imagine how strong his comprehension of laws was. At this moment, Qin Wendian's gigantic Buddhist path Dharma body manifested many arms, expanding in size at the same time, taking the initiative to attack instead of passively defending. Many people felt their hearts trembling. Facing against an expert who had comprehended the source origins of laws, Qin Wendian actually still had the strength to retaliate. The madman's gaze froze as his hair fluttered in the wind. He raised his hand and performed a sword art. Terrifying lotus sword intense manifested in the air, manifesting from the sword river. Numerous sword-shaped lotuses continued to grow, blotting out everything and wrapping around the incoming arms, shredding them into pieces bit by bit. The lotus sword that could annihilate everything shot towards Qin Wentian's body, expanding unceasingly, transforming into a great destructive lotus that could devour everything, wanting to envelop Qin Wentian's body within. Numerous spatial gates appeared in all directions as a terrifying pair of eyes of truth appeared in the air, directly locking onto the madman, instantly sealing him within his domain. Qin Wentian himself then stepped into the spatial gate, vanishing from sight. In the next instant, he appeared before the madman, piercing through the lotus swords. The madman instantly broke free from the spatial domain of the eyes of truth. However, what welcomed him was an incomparably resplendent beam of light. Boom! The sword intent instantly enveloped him, transforming him into a sword. The fist of light blasted out, forcing him back, directly flying into the sword river. His body arched slightly before he stood up straight again. Under his messy long hair, his eyes grew even more terrifying. He was actually forced back by Qin Wentian. The people in the surroundings all felt their hearts trembling as they stared in shock at Qin Wentian. That madman who spent 1,000 years sharpening his sword, using his blood to sharpen his sword. He was numb to killing, yet he was actually blocked by this supreme immortal emperor. You are not Tianwen. You are Qin Wentian, the governor of Lifire City. Tens of years ago, during the grand banquet of the lifelong realm, Qin Wentian defeated 8 world palace lords and monarchs with a cultivation base at the mid-stage of the immortal emperor realm. I Ching suddenly spoke. Although he wasn't there, he had heard of that battle before. Qin Wentian and Di Tian were simply too famous. There were people who described that battle before. I Ching thought of Tianwen's name and a thought flashed in his mind. He then thought of Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian? The people from the 4 desolate palaces and Murong Xiao froze. They have also heard of this name before. This man was known as one of the supreme young immortal emperors with the most potential in the lifelong realm. Compared to him, Shan Lingqiu, who was the top ranker of the lifelong realm 2 years ago, didn't seem to have much weight at all. Qin Wentian was a mid-stage immortal emperor back then. Now, he was already a peak-stage immortal emperor. However, this Qin Wentian was different from Shan Lingqiu. He was truly low-profile enough. That madman frowned when he heard that Qin Wentian was a character admired by the realm lord. He then spoke, "Your law energy is very strong, but you might not be able to block my law source origins. Senior, other than your sword law energy being superior to mine, I'm not inferior in any other aspects. It wouldn't be easy for Senior to defeat me." Qin Wentian spoke. "Even if this is true, if I want to kill you, how can you block me?" That madman coldly laughed. "I can't block you, but in the future, I will definitely be able to kill you." Qin Wentian stared at his opponent as he spoke. Chapter 1648. Right now, Qin Wentian was already at the peak stage of the immortal emperor realm. However, his opponent had already transcended mortality and entered sainthood, having comprehended the source origins of laws, transcending mortality, and undergoing a qualitative transformation. No matter how strong Qin Wentian's combat prowess was, it was still impossible for him to jump levels and kill Empyreans right now. After fighting against his opponent, Qin Wentian also deeply felt how terrifying characters at this level were. Also, this was merely comprehending the origin source of a single law attribute. If he could comprehend the origin source of multiple laws, how terrifying would that be? The qualitative change would surely overwhelm his transcendent combat prowess. Even if his astral souls were powerful, he would still find it hard to resist. Naturally, if Qin Wentian himself also comprehended the source origins of laws, things would be different. He was confident that he would be able to easily kill this madman before him. Qin Wentian's threatening voice caused the madman to stare at him. An evil smile appeared on his face as he spoke. "It's rare for me to meet such an interesting person. Since this is the case, I will spare their lives. However, if you think it's so easy to comprehend the source origins of laws, you are gravely mistaken. I've been sharpening my sword for 1,000 years. Killing them is merely testing my sword. It's fine even if I don't kill them. I'm very curious, how many years do you need to comprehend the source origins of laws? There's no need for Senior to worry about this. Qin Wentian was still smiling. That madman laughed evilly. After that, his silhouette flashed as he transformed into a sword and vanished in the blink of an eye. After he left, the gazes of everyone turned to Qin Wentian as they heaved a sigh of relief. Numerous figures walked over and bowed to Qin Wentian. Many thanks for saving our lives. Senior's strength is truly extraordinary. You are actually able to fight against Empyreans. I'm truly impressed. I've long heard of Brother Qin's name. Now that I've seen you today, not only is your reputation well-deserved, my horizons have truly been broadened. Yi Qing walked over and clasped his hands to Qin Wentian. In the past, if I was disrespectful in any way, I hope Brother Qin can forgive me. Today, if it wasn't for Brother Qin saving us, I'm afraid all of us would have died. It's nothing much. Qin Wentian smiled, appearing as easygoing as ever. Brother Qin, you have truly concealed yourself well. If I had known you were so powerful, I would have hugged your thigh tightly. Murong Xiaoxiao walked over and smiled gently. Yi Lian glanced at Murong Xiaoxiao, feeling some disgust in her heart. This woman was truly shameless enough, she didn't know how she managed to cultivate to her current level. Her beautiful eyes stared at Qin Wentian as she felt a sense of melancholy in her heart. Before this, she hadn't noticed that he was actually so handsome. His demeanor was extremely outstanding, and his entire person radiated a brilliant light. Compared to Shan Lingqiu, who was standing below, the two of them basically had no way to be mentioned in the same breath. Shan Lingqiu wasn't qualified to be compared to Qin Wentian. Although Yi Lian loathed how thick-skinned Murong Xiaoxiao was, she also felt an impulse to rush over. At this moment, Qin Wentian spoke to Murong Xiaoxiao, I've never concealed anything. It's just that Brother Shan is too outstanding, to the extent that even Fairy Murong wants to be friends with you. This is only human nature. Although Qin Wentian had a smile on his face, there was a hint of rejection in his eyes. Upon hearing this, Yi Lian also dispelled the thought of rushing over. That's right. Before this, all of them were hugging Shan Lingqiu, ignoring Qin Wentian. In fact, she even mocked him. Now that they saw that he was powerful, they immediately rushed over. What did this mean? The fact that Qin Wentian was willing to help them earlier could already be considered to be extremely benevolent and magnanimous. If it was someone narrow-minded, they would have already died. Everyone, there's no need to be so polite. Cultivation isn't easy. We came to the Taotai mine for the sake of cultivation. I hope everyone will be able to gain some benefits. Qin Wentian clasped his hands to the crowd. After that, he stepped forward and walked out of the crowd. Everyone opened up a path for him, their eyes filled with gratitude. Murong Xiaoxiao had an awkward expression on her face. She naturally understood that the so-called alliance between them naturally no longer existed. What does he want to do? At this moment, the eyes of everyone flashed as they stared at Qin Wentian. They saw Qin Wentian actually walking into the sword river that cascaded down from the sky. The sword river contained a torrential sword intent, flowing endlessly. Above Qin Wentian, a Dharma body appeared, blocking the corrosion of the sword river. He wants to learn from that madman, using the sword river to temper himself, comprehending the source origins of swords. The hearts of everyone trembled. Before this, when Qin Wentian and Shan Lingqiu discussed the Tao, the topic was the sword. From this point, one could tell that Qin Wentian was proficient in the sword. Also, his comprehension of swords would only be deeper compared to Shan Lingqiu. Since he was proficient in sword intent, why couldn't Qin Wentian do the same since Jian Fengzi was able to enter the Tao in the abyss back then? The crowd only saw Qin Wentian's body sinking deeper and deeper into the abyss. Finally, he vanished from the vision of everyone. Daring to temper the sword in the abyss, other than having a high enough comprehension ability, one must also have extraordinary strength. If not, they wouldn't be able to resist the corrosion of the sword river and would be directly destroyed. Someone spoke. They could only stay at the side of the sword river, they didn't dare to enter. Numerous figures flashed, each of the experts stood in a corner and continued to comprehend the source origins of the Sword River. With the earlier battle with Sword Madman, their desire grew even stronger in their hearts. Naturally, there were some more cautious people who chose to leave. They were worried that Qin Wentian would go crazy and kill his way back. If that was the case, they would be in dire straits. Shan Lingqiu didn't leave either. He walked to the side of the Sword River and sat down. His eyes gleamed with a terrifying sharpness. He wanted to regain his lost face. In that case, he had to comprehend the source origins earlier than Qin Wentian, transcending mortality and entering sainthood. Murong Xiao and the others have already been abandoned by Shan Lingqiu once and were almost killed. They naturally wouldn't bother Shan Lingqiu anymore. The group of them were like strangers, they didn't know each other. Murong Xiao and the others also didn't dare to take revenge on Shan Lingqiu. No matter how despicable Shan Lingqiu was, his strength was still there. In addition, given his identity as the grand disciple of the Realm Lord, no one would really act against him. In the blink of an eye, several years passed. During these years, Shan Lingqiu had been sitting there, comprehending his sword intent. It was like he wouldn't rest until he reached the path of the sword. Many of those who were saved by Qin Wentian back then were here. Some of them wanted to cultivate while others wanted to leave. But because they wanted to see Qin Wentian one more time and see when he would come out, they chose to stay and continue comprehending. Sometimes, curiosity was also a powerful driving force. In the depths of the abyss, a figure was enveloped in light, resembling a screen of light. When the Sword River cascaded onto the screen, the Sword River transformed into droplets of sword intent that seeped into Qin Wentian's body. However, Qin Wentian felt a terrifying sharpness, wanting to destroy everything in his body. Qin Wentian finally understood why the clothes of the madman earlier were tattered and there were so many bloodstains on his body. Clearly, that madman was the same as him, enduring this inhumane pain. Not only was he comprehending, he was also using his flesh and blood to sharpen his sword. Could it be that after he achieved the path of the sword, he would indulge himself to do whatever he wanted and start a massacre? Most probably, this process was too painful and he had suppressed himself for too long. He wanted to go crazy for a moment. Fresh blood appeared at the corner of Qin Wentian's lips. A look of agony could be seen on his face, but he still endured it. Only by personally experiencing the power of the source origin of the sword would he be able to sense it more clearly. By repeating this, Qin Wentian comprehended it bit by bit. He could feel the sharpness of the sword, the tyranny of the sword, and the gentleness of the sword. The source origin of the law contained many different forms of the law. As long as you were strong enough, you would be able to control them all. The sword intent would be your own will. However, knowing was one thing, truly comprehending it was another matter. Time continued to flow by. Qin Wentian's comprehension of the law grew increasingly deeper. His cultivation base continued to stabilize, truly reaching the peak of the immortal emperor realm. It was as though he was only a step away from comprehending the source origin of the laws. Today, Qin Wentian stood there as the river of swords flowed past him. Right now, he no longer resisted and was completely immersed in the river of swords. His white robes were already stained with blood, but right now, when the river of swords flowed past him, he didn't move at all. There was no longer the pain he felt in the past. He merely closed his eyes, appearing incomparably serene, as though he had entered a wondrous state. Why was it that the river of swords didn't injure him? The source origin of the sword contained many different forms of the sword. If he could truly sense the gentleness of the sword, this sword naturally wouldn't be able to injure him. More importantly, this indicated that he could already faintly control the form of the sword. However, at this moment, Qin Wentian seemed to be completely unaware of this. He was still immersed in his own world, as though he was in a state of enlightenment. It has already been over 10 years since Qin Wentian entered the Taotai mine. Today, the river of swords continued to cascade down like in the past, flowing through Qin Wentian's body. Qin Wentian, who had his eyes closed, finally opened them as a faint smile could be seen in his resplendent eyes. Raising his head, Zhang Xian saw that the river of swords was flowing in reverse, going against the flow and heading up into the sky. At this moment, in the surroundings of the river of swords, there were still many experts. One batch left and another batch came. Shan Lingqiu, Murong Xiao, and the others were still here. Shan Lingqiu was filled with reluctance in his heart. Before he comprehended the sword Dao, he vowed not to leave. At this moment, the gazes of everyone froze. All of them stared in terror at the scene below. They only saw a terrifying aura gushing over. In the next instant, all of them retreated explosively. They saw a heavenly river of swords flowing upwards, resembling a desolate primordial beast, gushing towards the sky, transforming into a fearsome tempest. As long as a wisp of the tempest's intent gushed out, it might be able to kill an immortal emperor. Everyone who retreated to the distance stared at the storm in front of them. In the next moment, their eyes froze again. In the center of the sword storm, there was actually a figure standing there. He was dressed in white and was stained with blood. He stood in the center of the sword storm like a true god that would be worshipped by all living beings. Chapter 1649. This scene was somewhat similar to the madman who appeared in the past. Those who had witnessed the madman's breakthrough before understood. Qin Wentian had stepped into that level, transcending mortality and entering sainthood, transcending immortal emperors. How terrifying! Many people felt their hearts trembling. Murong Xiao and the others stared in shock at Qin Wentian. Tens of years ago, he was merely a mid-stage immortal emperor during the lifelong grand banquet. Now, in just tens of years, he had broken through consecutively, breaking through the limits of the peak stage of the immortal emperor realm, stepping into this realm that countless people yearned for. As for that madman, he was said to have sharpened his sword for 1,000 years. From this, one could very well imagine how terrifying the disparity between them was. This is what comprehension is. Maybe, although he is at the mid-stage of the immortal emperor realm, his comprehension has already surpassed many peak-stage immortal emperors or even transcendent stage immortal emperors. For example, Shan Lingqiu. Back then when the two of them discussed the sword Dao, Qin Wentian clearly had a deeper comprehension of the sword compared to Shan Lingqiu. Congratulations, senior. Yi Qing spoke. Right now, he didn't even refer to Qin Wentian as Brother Qin, he should refer to him as senior instead. In the cultivation world, the strong were always revered. As for age, it wasn't something that could be seen with one's eyes. In addition, it didn't mean that he had to respect you just because you have lived longer. For example, in the lifelong realm, there might be some old fellows who had lived longer than the lifelong realm lord. But could it be that the realm lord would have to bow to them as juniors? Unless it was to the elders of his clan or to people he deeply respected. Only then would he do so. For example, if Qin Wentian met some elders with lower cultivation bases, he would still refer to them as senior. This was a form of respect. But for strangers, he naturally wouldn't use age to determine seniority. It was strength. There's a difference in seniority in comprehending the Tao. But only those who can become an Empyrean are truly extraordinary. Someone sighed. In the past, I've heard that when one reached the peak stage of the immortal emperor realm, their cultivation base would already be at the peak of perfection. If one wants to take that final step, it can no longer be achieved by increasing one's cultivation base. Instead, it has to depend on one's comprehension. Some people could comprehend it in a single move while others couldn't. Now that senior has stepped into the Empyrean realm, this point has been verified. Yeah, before this, senior Qin was already at the peak stage of the immortal emperor realm. But now, by relying on his comprehension abilities, he managed to reach this step in a mere 10+ years. We are all filled with admiration for him. Everyone's attitude changed again. 10 years ago, they were grateful to Qin Wentian for saving their lives, and they were already in awe of his powerful combat prowess. But now, they regarded Qin Wentian as a figure of another level. In their eyes, there was only respect for extraordinary figures. After Qin Wentian took this step, it meant that there was a real gap between them and a figure of another world. Although Qin Wendian had only comprehended a single law attribute, given his talent, since he could comprehend a single law attribute within 10 plus years, most probably, he would be able to comprehend the other laws sooner or later. At that time, he would be a character on equal footing with the Empyreans of the 9 world palaces. Characters at that level were naturally lofty existences. Hence, the respect they had for Qin Wendian was extremely natural. Only Shan Lungqiu had a gloomy expression on his face. He only felt pain and torment in his heart. He had always been cultivating here, hoping that he would be able to break through one day. However, only 10 plus years had passed. To cultivators at their level, this period of time was extremely short. He still hadn't comprehended anything yet Qin Wendian had already broken through. When he thought of this, he felt extremely depressed. However, this was merely Shan Lungqiu's personal feeling. Qin Wendian didn't even glance at him. He stood in the storm and nodded lightly to everyone. After that, his silhouette flashed as he transformed into a beam of sword light and vanished from sight, directly leaving this place. Upon seeing Qin Wendian leaving, everyone felt a sense of disappointment and frustration. Their hearts had yet to calm down. Breaking through to the Empyrean realm within 10 plus years. This was simply too terrifying. If Qin Wendian had already comprehended for many years, they might still be able to understand. However, they had all heard that tens of years ago, Qin Wendian was only at the mid-stage of the immortal emperor realm. However, Qin Wendian naturally wouldn't care about the thoughts of everyone. His entire person was like a beam of sword light, shuttling through the air. Not long after, he arrived at a flaming mountain. This flaming mountain exuded a terrifying heat, and in the center of the flaming mountain, there seemed to be a startling red color that resembled fresh blood. The redness caused one's heart to tremble. Qin Wendian enveloped his body with his sword intent. The sword law energy around him was like a layer of armor, enveloping him within. He stepped out step by step, entering the flaming mountain and arriving at the center. Over here, there were many rocks that resembled fresh blood. The surroundings were filled with a blood-red gas. There were no other types of energy here, only flames could exist. Qin Wendian used his sword to pick them up before tossing them away. He knew that such a terrifying destructive ore wouldn't be able to be taken away using an interspatial ring. It would directly incinerate the ring. Only an Empyrean would be able to store it. Qin Wendian walked around here for several days. After that, he transformed into a sword and left, continuing to roam the Taotai mine. He didn't come here for the ores, he came here for his cultivation. Time continued to flow. Qin Wendian didn't care about external affairs, temporarily pushing everything to the back of his mind. The news of Princess Kitamura in the past had greatly stimulated him. Without strength, there was nothing he could do about all of this. During these years when Qin Wendian disappeared, there were incidents happening every day in Lifire City. However, the greatest incident was still the death of the Jialan monarch. This matter had yet to be investigated, and it was said that the Lifire Empyrean was infuriated because of this. He continued to announce that the Lifire Empyrean was in charge of all the regions under the Lifire Palace's control, using extremely great benefits to tempt the bandits to surrender themselves. Also, several years ago, there was actually a greedy person who came to the Lifire Palace. This person was none other than one of the bandits from Heavenly City, and he used his immortal sense to sketch out the appearance of the bandit leader. However, no one was able to recognize this person. Zhuge Xiong suspected that this bandit leader must have changed his appearance. Also, this bandit leader's defenses were extremely tight, the bandits didn't know each other at all. There was basically no way for him to find any clues. Zhuge Xiong knew that it was basically hopeless to start investigating from the bandits. Hence, that immortal king who received the rewards was still fantasizing about his future. After enjoying a few years of good days in Lifire City, he finally decided to leave the city and head to other places. However, on the first day he left the city, he was already killed by someone. All the cultivation resources he obtained, other than the ones he used up, were all taken back by someone else. Luckily, the other bandits didn't lose their rationality because of greed. That was why they didn't court their own deaths. In the Lifefire Palace, Zhuge Xiong was reporting this news to the Lifefire Empyrean. It has been so many years but there's still no news about Jelon's death. The Lifefire Empyrean's voice was filled with unhappiness. Reporting to Palace Lord, the bandit leader only appeared once. Also, none of the bandits were acquainted with each other. I guess that the bandit leader who killed Jelon might have used some sort of disguise method. There's basically no clues at all. There's only one piece of news that is more suspicious. Zhuge Xiong spoke. What news? The Lifefire Empyrean asked. The Jelon clan made use of this matter to make a big fuss. Right now, even the lifelong Saint Hall knew about this and sent people to question them. This caused him to feel extremely unhappy. The gathering of the bandits seemed to have started from Heavenly City. And Heavenly City was the place where Yi Qianyu's Thousand Feathers Palace was located. Zhuge Xiong spoke. The eyes of the Lifefire Empyrean flashed with a terrifying sharpness. You still suspect Qin Wentian? Without evidence, this subordinate doesn't dare to suspect anyone. Zhuge Xiong lowered his head. Right now, Qin Wentian was no longer the same as before. He was no longer the Qin Wentian of the past. Zhuge Xiong, through these years, you have always been my follower. The matters in Lifefire City have always been handled by you. This seat has always trusted your intelligence. If you have anything to say, just say it, no matter who it implicates. The Lifefire Empyrean spoke. Zhuge Xiong had always been extremely intelligent, he was his advisor and was deeply trusted by the Lifefire Empyrean. Hence, Zhuge Xiong had always been the Grand Governor. Palace Lord, since this is the case, this seat will speak directly. According to our investigations, we know that Governor Qin is proficient in the art of disguise. Back then in Heavenly City, he had appeared with a different appearance. Zhuge Xiong analyzed. Also, after the Jelon monarch died, all of us instantly suspected him. But in truth, Governor Qin is indeed the most suspicious. But back then in the governor's manor, there were indeed many people who saw Qin Wentian leaving the governor's manor. There's no mistake about this matter. The Lifefire Empyrean spoke with certainty. This is exactly what this subordinate wants to say. What sort of character is Governor Qin? Does he need to give an explanation when he leaves? Those people from the governor's manor, which one of them would dare to disturb him normally? Although he did it very casually that day and didn't seem to be intentional, I still feel that he did it intentionally. The timing is too coincidental. Zhuge Xiong furrowed his brows. In addition, there's another very important point. Since Qin Wentian is proficient in disguise, in that case, wouldn't there be other cultivators who are proficient in disguise who could disguise themselves as Qin Wentian? Zhuge Xiong asked. The Lifefire Empyrean's eyes flashed when he heard this. After a moment of silence, he still shook his head. After leaving the governor's manor, if he cooperated with others, the risk would be too great. Also, who would have the guts to cooperate with Qin Wentian? I feel that this isn't reliable. Palace Lord is truly impressive. This subordinate also feels that this isn't reliable. Zhuge Xiong spoke. The Lifefire Empyrean glared at him. Since you said that this isn't reliable, why are you telling me this? Because, this subordinate has an even bolder conjecture. Zhuge Xiong spoke. What conjecture? The Lifefire Empyrean asked. Qin Wentian must have cultivated some kind of avatar technique. This avatar technique is extremely powerful, allowing one to temporarily possess his aura. Zhuge Xiong spoke. In an instant, the Lifefire Empyrean's eyes flashed with an incomparably resplendent light. Zhuge Xiong's words seemed to have enlightened him. It was like everything was about to become clear. He felt that there was a very high possibility that this was the truth. Upon thinking of this, the Lifefire Empyrean's eyes narrowed as killing intent flashed in his eyes. Chapter 1650. Zhuge Xiong's words were completely possible. There were many powerful avatar techniques in the supreme ancient immortal realms. Even if the two were separated by millions of miles, they could still appear at the same time and exist for a very long period of time. In fact, there were even some heaven-defying avatar techniques that could allow the avatar to fight at the same level as the original body. As to why they didn't think of this before, it was because this was a blind spot. When the Jelan monarch died, Qin Wentian appeared in the governor's manor. Very naturally, they wouldn't suspect him. However, Zhuge Xiong was extremely intelligent and had always been the brains of the Li-Fire Palace. He was highly regarded by the Li-Fire Empyrean, and after his investigations, he discovered that there was no way to continue investigating the Jelan monarch's death. This would become an unsolvable case. In addition, the only clue to this unsolved case was actually in Heavenly City. Hence, Zhuge Xiong had no choice but to reanalyze the situation and suspect the person who killed the Jelan monarch. He wanted to see if he could completely eliminate Qin Wentian's suspicions. After that, he discovered that Qin Wentian had a high possibility of killing the Jelan monarch. As long as he had an avatar, there was no way for him to continue investigating this unsolved case. Qin Wentian was the greatest suspect, hence the conversation today. The Li-Fire Empyrean seemed to have been enlightened by Zhuge Xiong's words. He felt that this was the truth. Immediately summon all the governors other than Qin Wentian here for a discussion. The Li-Fire Empyrean coldly spoke. Yes. Zhuge Xiong nodded. After that, he took out his messaging crystal and summoned all the governors. Upon receiving Zhuge Xiong's command, all the governors appeared in the Li-Fire Palace and were brought to the Great Hall where the Li-Fire Empyrean resided. In this region, everyone was a trusted aide of the Li-Fire Empyrean. Palace Lord, Grand Governor, what happened? Central Governor Sun Qian asked. He could sense that the atmosphere was somewhat different. The Li-Fire Empyrean and Grand Governor seemed to have something important to announce. Zhuge, these people are all old people. Tell them what you said to me earlier. The Li-Fire Empyrean spoke. Zhuge Xiong nodded and told everyone about his suspicions. After hearing his words, the eyes of all the governors flashed. The habitual smile on Beauty Zhao's face vanished as her expression turned heavy. One couldn't help but say that Zhuge Xiong's suspicions were very possible. Even for them, they faintly believed it. One must know that back then when the Jelan monarch died, almost everyone suspected that the killer was Qin Wentian. But because Qin Wentian appeared in the governor's manor, everyone dispelled their suspicions. But if it was like what Zhuge Xiong guessed, Qin Wentian had an avatar technique, there was no need to doubt this matter anymore. What do you all think? The Li-Fire Empyrean asked. We still can't be certain that Governor Qin has an avatar. Palace Mistress, your subordinate feels that this isn't too appropriate. Beauty Zhao spoke. Beauty Zhao, just because Governor Qin is handsome, you want to speak up for him? Yin Qiu spoke in a neutral tone. Oh yeah, back then in Lifelong City, Governor Qin even helped you resolve the humiliation from the Sword Spirit Sect's Shao clan. I'm just stating the facts. What do you mean by this? Beauty Zhao stared at Yin Qiu. Right now, Yin Qiu had already given up on Beauty Zhao. This woman had always looked down on him. Since this was the case, there was no need for him to be polite. Everyone knows that the Jelan monarch died. The possibility of Qin Wentian being the culprit is the highest. Given the strength he displayed back then in Lifelong City, as well as his attack-type innate techniques, it wouldn't be strange even if he hid an avatar. There's an 80 to 90% chance that the Jelan monarch was killed by him. You are the first to speak up for him. Don't tell me you have already hooked up with him. Yin Qiu mocked. He and Qin Wentian had never been on good terms. Enough. The Li-Fire Empyrean couldn't help but interrupt when he saw the two of them arguing. Speak the truth, don't argue. Lin Ba, Sun Qian, what do you two think? Palace Lord, this subordinate will completely respect Palace Lord's decision. Sun Qian spoke, purely bootlicking. However, his bootlicking was very appropriate because he knew that since the Li-Fire Empyrean gathered them here to discuss this matter, it definitely wasn't just to ask for their opinions. Zhuge Xiong has already said that there was no way to investigate this matter. In that case, everything would depend on a single thought. Sun Qian was able to sit in the central governor's position after Xia Ho. He was naturally an extremely intelligent person. Although he appeared amicable on the surface, he was actually very astute. I can't exclude that possibility. Lin Ba's reply conformed to the norm, he didn't dare to confirm nor deny. The various governors all had different opinions. Their gazes all landed on the Li-Fire Empyrean. There was no evidence. Ultimately, no matter what the Li-Fire Empyrean thinks, it would be the truth. Since this matter had already become an unresolved case, if the Li-Fire Empyrean said that Qin Wentian was the killer, he would be the killer. If he said he wasn't, he wouldn't be the killer. Everything would depend on a single thought. Beauty Zhao's beautiful eyes were filled with nervousness. Right now, Qin Wentian's wings had yet to fully grow. If the Li-Fire Empyrean wanted to deal with him, things would truly be dire. No one is allowed to leak this matter out. For the past few times when the tributes are due, Qin Wentian didn't return but sent someone over instead. Right now, the deadline of 10 years is almost here. Zhuge Xiong, send a message to him that he has to personally make a trip to the Li-Fire Palace on the day of the tributes. I have something to discuss with him. The Li-Fire Empyrean slowly spoke. After that, the eyes of everyone flashed. They all understood that this sentence of the Li-Fire Empyrean was equivalent to announcing his attitude and his decision. Qin Wentian was going to be in dire straits. The Li-Fire Empyrean wanted to deal with him, nipping the threat in the cradle. They all understood that if the Jialan monarch was killed by Qin Wentian, given how impulsive this man was, he would definitely kill the Li-Fire Empyrean sooner or later when he had enough strength. Back then, the Jialan monarch was the one who carried out the mission, but the order was given by the Li-Fire Palace. They even sent experts to coordinate with him. Palace Lord, the current Qin Wentian is different from the past. Back then during the grand banquet in the lifelong realm, even the realm lord regarded him highly. Wouldn't it be too inappropriate? Wouldn't it affect the realm lord's opinion of you? Yin Xiu seemed to be very loyal, thinking for the Li-Fire Empyrean. However, Beauty Xiao coldly glanced at him. This was clearly trying to provoke the Li-Fire Empyrean. The Li-Fire Empyrean coldly glanced at Yin Xiu, causing him to shiver. It was like the Li-Fire Empyrean had seen through him. On the day of tribute, all of you will come as well. At that time, I will ask Qin Wentian about this matter. You guys will be the witnesses. A governor disguised as a bandit and killed the monarch of my Li-Fire Palace. This is already considered a traitor, betraying the Li-Fire Palace and the lifelong realm. He shall be executed on the spot. The Li-Fire Empyrean coldly spoke. Yes, Palace Lord. Yin Xiu bowed. Yes, Palace Lord. Lin Ba and Sun Qian bowed as well. This was the Li-Fire Palace, who would dare to defy the Li-Fire Empyrean's words. He wanted to deal with Qin Wentian. In that case, no matter how outstanding Qin Wentian was, there was nothing he could do to reverse the situation. If there was no Jialan monarch, things would still be fine. The Li-Fire Empyrean wouldn't be able to find an excuse to deal with him, and he wouldn't be able to answer to the lifelong Saint Hall. However, the Jialan monarch's death was undoubtedly the best excuse. Yes, Palace Lord. Beauty Xiao nodded as well. Zhuge Xiong glanced at them. If anyone leaks the news today, you guys should know the consequences. The Li-Fire Empyrean calmly glanced at them. He was confident that no one would dare to leak his orders. He has controlled the Li-Fire Palace for so many years, and he naturally had this bit of prestige. In addition, these people wouldn't betray him for the sake of a mere Qin Wentian. This was simply courting death. Go on. The Li-Fire Empyrean waved his hand. After that, everyone bowed and retreated. After Beauty Xiao left the Li-Fire Palace, she sped along the way. She took out her messaging crystal and sent her immortal sense in, reply quickly. What's the matter? A voice rang out in Beauty Zhao's mind. She sent another message into her messaging crystal: if Zhuge Xiong looks for you, don't reply no matter what. He and the Li-Fire Empyrean guessed that you might have cultivated an avatar technique and the one who killed the Jialan monarch is you. The Li-Fire Empyrean wants to deal with you. After her voice rang out, the other side fell silent for a moment before a reply rang out: got it. Be careful. MHM Beauty Xiao replied. After that, she kept her messaging crystal and continued on her way. A moment later, she heard another voice: thank you. Upon hearing this voice, Beauty Xiao smiled sweetly. Her sexy red lips curled up in a suggestive manner. As expected, not long after Beauty Xiao sent the news to Qin Wendian, Zhuge Xiong also sent a message to him. Qin Wendian didn't reply. He knew that earlier, Beauty Xiao was fighting against time with Zhuge Xiong. If Zhuge Xiong sent the message first and he replied, it would mean that he already knew about it. But now, as long as he didn't reply, the Li-Fire Empyrean and Zhuge Xiong could only suspect him. There were many possibilities if he didn't reply. For example, he might be in danger or he might have lost his messaging crystal. Since Qin Wendian knew about it, Di Tian naturally also knew about it. Right now, he wasn't in Li-Fire City but was in Lifelong City instead. Today, the Xianyuan clan hosted a banquet and invited Di Tian. The Emperor Pavilion was already flourishing in Li-Fire City. Right now, Di Tian was already expanding his influence in Lifelong City. There was no need to mention the Jialan clan. The Xianyuan clan also wanted to form a connection with him. In that case, it was naturally very easy for him to form a connection with them. Right now, Di Tian already rarely dealt with the matters of the Emperor Pavilion in Li-Fire City. All of them were handed over to his subordinates. Other than cultivating, he would occasionally appear in the various peak powers to socialize. Grandmaster Di, what are you thinking about? At this moment, an expert from the Xianyuan clan asked. Di Tian's eyes flashed under the mask as he smiled, nothing much. However, in truth, he felt some fluctuations in his heart. He didn't expect that Zhuge Xiong would actually be able to guess that it was an avatar. Although he was certain that there wouldn't be any evidence for this, if the Li-Fire Empyrean was determined to kill him, there was no need for any evidence. He could just directly push the blame onto him. Seems like I have to make preparations in advance. Di Tian mused. Chapter 1651. Zhuge Xiong had no way to contact Qin Wendian. No matter what he said, there was no reply from Qin Wendian's side. He also personally went to the northern governor's manor and told the evil emperor and the others to contact Qin Wendian. However, the evil emperor tried to contact Qin Wendian in front of him but he still failed. Also, from the expression of the evil emperor at that time, he seemed to be worried, afraid that something might have happened to Qin Wendian. Hence, this became another mystery. Right now, what happened to Qin Wendian exactly? Did he intentionally not reply to their messages or did he lose his messaging crystal? Their plan was foiled because of Qin Wendian's lack of reply. In addition, they had no other solutions. For this round of tribute, Qin Wendian still didn't show up. It was the evil emperor who brought his subordinates over and paid the same amount of tribute. Right now, in the northern city regions, there were no powers that dared to pay less tribute to the governor's manor. Although Qin Wendian wasn't around, the prestige of the governor's manor was no longer the same as before. Not only did the plan fail this time around, for the next few tributes, Qin Wendian didn't show up at all. This also meant that Qin Wendian had already been out for tens of years and there was no news of him at all. It was like he had completely vanished. Every time the Li-Fire Empyrean thought of this, he would feel extremely unhappy and worried. Could it be that someone betrayed him? According to logic, those governors shouldn't have the guts to do so. After all, in the Li-Fire Palace, he was the one with the final say. No one would be able to oppose him. Those governors were very clear of the consequences of betraying him. In addition, Qin Wendian was famous in Li-Fire City for not interacting with others. Even if Beauty Xiao wanted to curry favor with him, she wouldn't be able to do so. Given Beauty Zhao's shrewd personality, if something happened to Qin Wentian, she wouldn't hesitate to abandon him and stand on his side. Right now, not only was the Li-Fire Empyrean worried about Qin Wentian, he was also worried about another person. That person was none other than Di Tian, the supervisory commander of the Li-Fire Palace who was rewarded by the Realm Lord. During these years, Di Tian's development was simply too fast. He was different from Qin Wentian, who kept a low profile and endured silently. His Emperor Pavilion's development could be said to be godly. Because of the lifelong Realm Lord's words, all the major powers were willing to aid them in their development. Right now, the power of the Emperor Pavilion in Li-Fire City had already surpassed the Jialan clan. It was just that their foundations weren't as deep as the Jialan clan. Also, there wasn't an existence at the Immortal Emperor realm among them. However, the Emperor Pavilion still caused the Li-Fire Empyrean to feel somewhat uncomfortable. In his territory, just the Jialan clan alone was enough. Now, the Emperor Pavilion has also appeared and he couldn't interfere. What made him unhappy was that the Emperor Pavilion's relationship with the Jialan clan was very close, even closer than him, the Li-Fire Empyrean. In the western city regions of Li-Fire City. Right now, the Emperor Pavilion has already expanded to this location and had a great amount of influence in the western city regions. Today, Di Tian personally came to the western city regions and gathered many major and minor powers here. He then prepared a banquet and invited the leaders of the major powers here. The banquet was extremely lively. Di Tian sat in the host's seat. He was still wearing a mask and had a smile in his eyes. He stared at the people below and spoke. The Emperor Pavilion has already developed for many years in the western city regions. This time around, the reason why I invited everyone to this banquet is because I wish to find a few major powers to cooperate with me. In that case, my Emperor Pavilion would be able to develop even faster. Di Tian's words instantly caused the hearts of many experts to pound with excitement. Right now, as long as the various city regions had a connection with the Emperor Pavilion, they would be able to soar to greater heights. This was especially so for the Mo clan that had a good relationship with Grandmaster Di. Right now, the Mo clan has already become one of the peak powers in the central city regions. The Yen clan that was as famous as the Mo clan was no longer around, and the other clans that specialized in formations were all swallowed up by the Emperor Pavilion. However, only first-tier powers are willing to cooperate with my Emperor Pavilion. I wonder which power is willing to do so. Di Tian asked. My Nye clan is willing to cooperate with the Emperor Pavilion. My Violet Thunder Pavilion is also willing to develop together with Grandmaster Di. Many first-tier powers spoke. Di Tian smiled and nodded. I didn't expect everyone to support me so much. It's really hard for me to choose. Grandmaster Di. At this moment, someone spoke. Although my He clan isn't a first-tier power, in truth, our strength and assets aren't inferior to a first-tier power. I hope Grandmaster Di can consider this. Oh. Is that so? Di Tian laughed. I've also heard of the He clan. I heard that the He clan of the western city regions produces many beauties. I wonder if the rumors are true or false. If Grandmaster Di is interested, you can come to my He clan anytime. That elder from the He clan smiled, revealing a meaningful smile. He heard that Grandmaster Di had many beauties wooing him, but he didn't marry anyone. Most probably, this man was too arrogant. Even for the young misses of the various clans, he felt that they weren't qualified to marry him. However, those women most probably already had relations with him. If not, why would he be so close to the Jialan clan? Why would he help the Mo clan to grow into a transcendent power? Since this was the case, if there was a woman from the He clan who could have a relationship with Di Tian, he wouldn't mind it. Sacrificing one person to strengthen the He clan, why not? In addition, it wouldn't be too bad if she could become Grandmaster Di's woman. After all, Jialan Chuyue of the Jialan clan had always been sticking close to Grandmaster Di. Right, if there's a chance, I will definitely go there. Di Tian revealed a meaningful smile to that elder from the He clan. After that, he asked with some bewilderment, it's just that, does the He clan really have such a strong power and assets? Why is it not a first-tier power? Grandmaster D, is there even a need to ask? Someone from the other powers laughed. Grandmaster D, you've already said that the He clan has many beauties. Our Lord Governor would also frequently visit the He clan. A few people laughed. The experts from the He clan smiled but didn't say anything. Oh, no wonder. Since this is the case, I will consider the He clan as well. It's just that this Governor Een, isn't he worried that the palace lord would blame him? A look of enlightenment appeared on D. Tian's face as he shook his head and bitterly smiled. Ha, Grandmaster D is too naive. Someone laughed uproariously. What do you mean? D. Tian asked. Let's not talk about this anymore. In any case, these are all rules that stick to convention. That person laughed and waved his hands. Understood, understood. D. Tian nodded. It's just that I wonder how good the relationship between the He clan and Governor Een is. If my Emperor Pavilion can gain the support of the Governor's manor, things would definitely be smoother. Grandmaster D, there's no need to worry. My He clan has an extremely good relationship with Governor Een. That expert from the He clan laughed. Since this is the case, let me ask one more thing. Does the He clan really have the strength of a first-tier power? D. Tian asked. I can confirm that. Everyone here can testify as well. That expert from the He clan laughed. Upon hearing his words, D. Tian smiled and nodded. Men, come over. A figure flashed and appeared beside D. Tian, respectfully greeting, Pavilion Lord. Help me make a trip to the Governor's manor and invite Governor Een Chiu to attend the banquet. D. Tian spoke. That person nodded and retreated, departing this place. Grandmaster D, why did you invite Governor Een Chiu over? That expert from the He clan asked in puzzlement. Everyone will know when he comes. D. Tian's smile was filled with deep meaning. Come, let us continue drinking. The group of them drank and chatted happily. After 3 rounds of wine, they all felt more familiar with each other. Hence, their words became more casual and casual. After some time, Een Chiu brought his men over. When he saw how lively the banquet was, he couldn't help but to frown. This was his western city regions. D. Tian gathered all the major powers here and seemed to be very familiar with them. There has always been a barrier between him and D. Tian. Back then when D. Tian wanted to act against Xia Ho, he had already objected. Governor D, why didn't you say anything before coming to my western city regions? I would have welcomed you well. Een Chiu smiled. D. Tian calmly sat there, glancing at him as he smiled. Earlier when I was chatting with everyone here, I just so happened to talk about Governor Een. Hence, I invited Governor Een to make a trip here. What did they talk about? Een Chiu smiled as he glanced at everyone. We talked about how Governor Een Chiu would often visit the He clan and their relationship is very good. Also, the He clan said that they have the strength and scale of a first-tier power but they are only classified as a third-tier power. This truly broadened my horizons. D. Tian laughed. Een Chiu's expression instantly changed. He stared at that expert from the He clan and berated, what nonsense are you talking about? The He clan has the strength of a first-tier power. How dare you boast in front of Governor D. Tian? You simply don't know the immensity of the heavens and earth. The expression of that expert from the He clan changed. He could sense that the atmosphere suddenly changed. Something was amiss. In the crowd, there was an expert who lowered his head as a cold smile flashed in his eyes. In the past, he had participated in the Emperor Pavilion's banquet. It was none other than the banquet that determined Governor Xia Ho's fate. At that time, Governor Een Chiu objected to Governor D. Tian's opinion and D. Tian was also the governor of the Law Enforcement Division. Today's conversation had a deeper meaning to it. Earlier, he even intentionally or unintentionally tried to instigate D. Tian. What was laughable was that the He clan's elder was still immensely pleased with himself. That's right, it was I who was boasting. I hope Grandmaster Di Tian won't blame me. That elder from the He clan reacted very quickly, instantly changing his words. In that case, does this mean that the He clan is only a third-tier power? That's why the governor's manor classified the He clan as a third-tier power? Di Tian asked. That's right. Yin Qiu replied. Di Tian laughed. He turned his gaze behind him only to see a few figures flying over. One of them bowed. Lord Governor, earlier we've already investigated. The He clan's businesses are definitely a first-tier power. Emicham, Di Tian nodded. He lifted his wine cup and drank a mouthful. His black eyes flashed with sharpness as he stared at Yin Qiu. Governor Yin, do you know your crime? Yin Qiu's heart sank. Di Tian clearly came with ill intentions. Clearly, Di Tian was here to deal with him. This bastard, wasn't it enough to deal with Xiaoho? Did he want to target Yin Qiu as well? Could it be that Di Tian didn't know that the governors of the various governors' manors were all personally appointed by the Li-Fire Empyrean? This meant that they were all subordinates of the Li-Fire Empyrean. Was it really because of a personal grudge that Di Tian acted against them? Or could it be that he was challenging the authority of the Li-Fire Empyrean? Chapter 1652. Governor Di Tian must be joking. What crime have I committed? Yin Qiu had an awkward expression on his face. He coldly glanced at the experts from the He clan, causing the atmosphere of the banquet to turn silent. How could they still not understand what was going on? Governor Di Tian came here for a banquet. It was clear that he had ulterior motives. Before this, Di Tian was still laughing and chatting with the experts from the various major powers. But in the blink of an eye, he invited Governor Yin Qiu over and directly questioned him. The feeling he gave off was like a sinister plot. The He clan had fallen headfirst into this trap. Naturally, there were also people who rejoiced in their misfortune. They had long realized what Di Tian wanted to do by coming here. It was just that the experts from the He clan didn't understand. Earlier, the people from the He clan personally told me that their He clan has the strength of a first-tier power and the scale of a first-tier power. However, they were only classified as a third-tier power. In addition, they said that Governor Yin Qiu often visited their He clan and their relationship is very good. Everyone here can testify to this. Di Tian stared at Yin Qiu as he spoke. I misspoke and bragged. Grandmaster Di, please don't take it seriously. That expert from the He clan stood up and lifted his wine cup. Grandmaster Di, I misspoke after I drank too much. Please forgive me. As he spoke, he drained the cup in a single gulp. Di Tian coldly stared at him. After you finished speaking, I already sent people to investigate. The reports I received are indeed like what you said. I believe that the Li-Fire Empyrean would be able to easily investigate this matter. There's no meaning for you to continue lying. That expert from the He clan was drenched in cold sweat. Di Tian slowly stood up and stared at Yin Qiu. Governor Yin, what else do you have to say? Governor Di, even if there's such a thing, it might be my fault for being negligent. I will investigate this matter properly. Yin Qiu spoke. Governor Yin Qiu often visits the He clan. What else is there to investigate? Di Tian coldly laughed. As the governor of the western city regions of the Li-Fire Palace, Yin Qiu, you ignored the rules of Li-Fire City and even helped the He clan to exempt the He clan from paying taxes. How vast is the difference between a first-tier and a third-tier power? With your actions, how would the other major powers in Li-Fire City submit to you? I received the Realm Lord's orders to take on the position of the supervisory commander. Since I've investigated this matter, I will definitely not let this matter rest. Bastard! Yin Qiu cursed silently in his heart. This bastard is trying to use the name of the lifelong Realm Lord to act against him. Commander Di Tian, it was just a small conflict in the past. There's no need for you to use your official position to avenge your personal grudges, right? Yin Qiu's voice turned sinister. Such a small matter to a governor was basically nothing. Just like what everyone said earlier, this was merely an unwritten rule. If he really wanted to investigate, all 5 governors of Lifire City wouldn't have any problems. All of them would definitely be in trouble. Di Tian was clearly taking revenge on Hui Yuhao for siding with Xia Ho back then. Yin Xiu naturally wouldn't expect that Di Tian wanted to deal with him. It wasn't because of the minor conflict between them back then. It was because when the Lifire Empyrean summoned all the governors, Yin Xiu wanted to kill Qin Wentian. At that time, he strongly believed in Zhuge Xiong's words. Since this was the case, it was time for the governors of Lifire City to be reorganized. Today, he would start with Yin Xiu of the Western City regions. This seat has always been impartial when doing things. This is my responsibility as the supervisory commander. You actually dare to slander this seat? Men, Governor Yin doesn't care about the rules of our Lifire Palace. Capture him. Di Tian coldly spoke. As the sound of his voice faded, 2 immortal emperors stepped out, walking towards Yin Xiu. Impudent. Another person walked out from behind Yin Xiu. It was one of the vice-governors of the governor's manor, Yin Xiu's subordinate. This seat is acting on the Realm Lord's orders to exercise the supervisory authority. Those who obstruct me will be treated as disobeying the Realm Lord. They will be killed without mercy. Di Tian coldly spoke. A moment later, the bodies of the 2 vice-governors stiffened as they felt cold sweat dripping down their backs. This Di Tian had already steeled his heart to deal with their vice-governor Yin. He kept bringing out the Realm Lord's name and even said the words kill without mercy. If they were really killed by Di Tian, it would truly be an injustice. This bastard, he was truly a bastard. Di Tian, if you want revenge, just say it clearly. There's no need to keep bringing out the Realm Lord's name. If the Realm Lord knows that you are using his name, he would definitely be unhappy. Yin Xiu coldly glanced at the 2 of them. I'm the Western City Governor of the Lifire Palace, personally appointed by the Lifire Empyrean. Which of you dares to touch me? Capture him. If he resists, it would be a crime of disobedience. I will personally act against him. Di Tian lifted his wine cup and drank a mouthful of wine. In an instant, the atmosphere of the banquet froze. It was too stifling. Everyone was trembling with fear as they stared at Di Tian and Yin Xiu. The 2 of them had directly shed all pretense of cordiality. The 2 immortal emperors continued walking towards Yin Xiu. Their law energy flashed, wrapping around Yin Xiu. You guys are truly impudent. Yin Xiu's expression turned dark to the extreme. His law energy erupted forth, causing the 2 immortal emperors to shiver as frost started to form on their bodies. It was impossible for Yin Xiu to sit still and wait for death. He didn't dare to imagine how Di Tian would deal with him after bringing him away. Hence, even if he didn't resist, he had no choice. Truly impudent. Di Tian spoke. He stood up and took a step forward. His eyes flickered with a terrifying sealing light, like the eyes of a seal. In an instant, resplendent law energy shot out from his eyes, raining down on Yin Xiu, wanting to seal the law energy in Yin Xiu's body. Scram! Yin Xiu coldly roared. He punched out with his fist, causing cracking sounds to ring out. The sealing light in Yin Xiu's eyes grew even more terrifying. The sealing light flowed unceasingly, gushing into Yin Xiu's body. Yin Xiu actually felt that he had no way to suppress this sealing energy. Di Tian stretched his hand out towards Yin Xiu and abruptly clenched his fist. In an instant, the boundless sealing law energy transformed into a formless sealing energy within Yin Xiu's body. Yin Xiu groaned in misery. He felt that the circulation of the law energy in his body was no longer smooth. He stared at Di Tian with a sinister look in his eyes. You actually broke through to the peak stage of the Immortal Emperor realm. Di Tian basically ignored Yin Xiu. The sealing law energy in his eyes was boundless as he clenched his fist again. The formless sealing energy ravaged Yin Xiu's body. Di Tian walked towards him step by step and spoke, Western Governor Yin Xiu, you violated the rules of the Lifire Palace, abusing your authority for personal gain. You even dared to resist this seat's supervision. Your crimes are unforgivable. After Di Tian spoke, he directly slammed his palm onto Yin Xiu's body. Yin Xiu let out a scream of agony as a terrifying transformation occurred in his body. Yin Xiu was drenched in cold sweat, his originally white countenance turned as pale as paper, without a trace of blood. He stared at Di Tian with fear in his eyes, as well as a terrifying curse. Di Tian actually dared to act so ruthlessly against him. How dare you act so arrogantly? The Liefire Empyrean will never spare you. Yin Xiu's voice was low and hoarse. The people in the surroundings all felt their hearts trembling. This was crazy. Ever since Di Tian was appointed as the supervisory commander, he alone crippled 2 of the Liefire Palace's governors. Back then, Governor Xia Ho had a deep grudge with Di Tian. But now, Di Tian wanted to cripple Yin Xiu as well. One must know that these 2 were governors appointed by the Liefire Empyrean. It was fine if Xia Ho didn't say anything, but now, Di Tian wanted to cripple Yin Xiu as well. How could the Liefire Empyrean not have any reaction? What did this Di Tian want to do exactly? The countenance of that expert from the He clan was already as pale as paper. His body was trembling. This time around, he had created a disaster, a great disaster. I, D, am ashamed that such a thing happened here today. I won't hold all of you back any longer. Everyone, please feel free to do as you please. Di Tian clasped his hands to everyone. The crowd naturally understood that Di Tian was telling them to leave. All of them bid their farewells, but their hearts were unable to calm down even after a long time. This matter was circulated to the Liefire Palace in the shortest time possible. Yin Xiu's 2 vice-governors also left. They weren't vegetarians, they naturally knew what they should do at this moment. But almost at the same time, Di Tian also sent someone to the Liefire Palace to report this matter. After Zhuge Xiong heard of this, his expression turned extremely ugly. He stared at the person who came to report, Governor Di Tian, what nonsense is this? After speaking, he took out his messaging crystal and sent a strand of immortal sense into it. Governor Di Tian, how did Governor Yin Xiu offend you? Grand Governor, Yin Xiu didn't offend me. It's just that he abused his authority for personal gain, messing up the distribution of power, causing many powers in the western city regions to complain and report this matter to me. I specially came here to investigate and as expected, I acted. Right now, I've already sent someone to the Liefire Empyrean to report this matter. Di Tian's voice rang out, filled with righteousness. Zhuge Xiong coldly laughed in his heart. Was there a need to send someone to report this matter? Wouldn't it be enough to just use the messaging crystal? This Di Tian was clearly being perfunctory, he wanted to deal with Yin Xiu. Governor Di Tian, Yin Xiu is after all a subordinate of the Liefire Empyrean. Can you listen to me and investigate this matter clearly? Maybe you have made a mistake. Zhuge Xiong pleaded for Yin Xiu. Grand Governor, I'll naturally send someone to investigate this matter. But it's impossible for me to make a mistake. Di Tian replied. He had already steeled his heart to deal with Yin Xiu. Zhuge Xiong even brought out the Liefire Empyrean, but Di Tian still didn't give him any face. Governor Di, there's no way to explain things clearly here. I'll go look for you. Zhuge Xiong kept his messaging crystal. He turned and entered the Liefire Palace. He didn't say anything more and came to the place where the Liefire Empyrean was at, outside a Supreme Grand Formation. What did he say? The Liefire Empyrean sat there cultivating as he asked. Palace Lord, I'm preparing to look for him personally. Zhuge Xiong spoke. Upon hearing this, the Liefire Empyrean's eyes flashed with a terrifying fiery light, causing Zhuge Xiong to feel a stifling pressure, terrifying to the extreme. He understood that the Liefire Empyrean was angered. Fine. Make a trip personally and probe this Di Tian. What does he want exactly? Does he also want my position as the Liefire Empyrean? The Liefire Empyrean sinisterly spoke. Di Tian consecutively made a move against 2 of his governors. This was already not giving him face at all. In fact, it could be said that this was a provocation to his authority. Could it be that this Di Tian really wanted to challenge his position? Maybe, Di Tian really had such ambitions. Upon thinking of this, the Li-Fire Empyrean's gaze grew even more terrifying. Chapter 1653. Grand Governor Zhuge Xiong came to the Emperor Pavilion in the western city regions. This was also the place where Di Tian captured Yin Xiu. When Di Tian saw Zhuge Xiong, he clasped his hands. Grand Governor, why have you come here? Governor Di, I'm here because of the matter regarding Governor Yin Xiu. How did Yin Xiu offend you exactly? You want to deal with him? If there's anything wrong, I'll get him to apologize to you. Zhuge Xiong spoke. Governor Yin Xiu didn't offend me. Didn't I say it before? He didn't abide by the rules of the Li-Fire Palace and abused his power for personal gain, creating a random ranking system. This is disrespect to the Empyrean and also a betrayal to the Realm Lord. I naturally have to capture him, but it's not because he offended me. Grand Governor, have you misunderstood something? Di Tian spoke with a straight face. Governor Di, back then the Empyrean knew about the grudge between you and Xia Ho. Hence, he allowed you to deal with Xia Ho and didn't say anything. Right now, although Yin Xiu made a mistake, it's only human nature. There are countless governors in the lifelong realm, who wouldn't have a small problem. Hence, I hope that Governor Di can consider things from the Empyrean's perspective. Zhuge Xiong seriously spoke. The hint in his words was already very clear. Governor Zhuge, what do you mean by this? According to what you said, the Empyrean is allowing the governors to not abide by the rules? Di Tian asked. Zhuge Xiong frowned. This Di Tian was actually still pretending to be ignorant. It seemed like he was a little stubborn. Brother Di, you should know very well how the Empyrean treats you. During these years, he has never interfered with the expansion of the Emperor Pavilion. In fact, even when you were very close to the Jialan clan, the Empyrean didn't say anything. Can you not see all this? Zhuge Xiong spoke. Di Tian naturally understands the Empyrean's intentions. However, I'm only acting as the supervisory commander. I don't understand what Governor Zhuge is trying to say. Di Tian's voice turned cold. In truth, he was extremely unhappy with this Zhuge Xiong. This man actually managed to deduce the existence of an avatar. He was truly a dangerous character. In addition, it was one thing for Zhuge Xiong to deduce it, but he actually reported it to the Li-Fire Empyrean, wanting to kill him. If the main body had returned without knowing anything, it would have been an extremely dangerous thing to do, and it was very likely that he would not be able to return. Commander Di, do you really not understand or are you pretending not to? Zhuge Xiong's voice grew louder. Grand Commander, please guide me, Di Tian said indifferently. Palace Lord, tell Governor Di to release Yin Xiu. I want to bring Yin Xiu away. Zhuge Xiong didn't waste any more time and went straight to the point. He wanted to see how Di Tian would react. This way, he would be able to find out where Di Tian's bottom line was. All right. Much to Zhuge Xiong's surprise, Di Tian nodded his head painfully and said in a clear voice, bring him here. Upon hearing this, a smile appeared on Zhuge Xiong's face as he heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. Brother Di Tian, that's right. We are all colleagues, why must we make things so unpleasant? Di Tian started, staring strangely at Zhuge Xiong. Upon seeing the look in Di Tian's eyes, Zhuge Xiong didn't understand. But when someone brought Yin Xiu over, Zhuge Xiong finally understood. His expression instantly turned ashen, extremely unsightly to behold. Staring at Yin Xiu, who was so weak that he couldn't even stand up straight, he coldly spoke, Governor Di, what did you do to Yin Xiu? I exercised my authority as the supervising governor, but Yin Xiu refused to cooperate and even injured my subordinates. Helpless, I could only act and cripple him to prevent him from injuring others. Lord Governor, the Palace Lord wouldn't blame me for being too heavy-handed, right? Di Tian asked despite knowing the answer. Zhuge Xiong's expression was as unsightly as it could be. Had he been wasting his breath all this while? Yin Qiu was already crippled. Earlier, he still thought that Di Tian had compromised, but he didn't expect that Di Tian had no intentions of compromising from the start. Di Tian directly acted ruthlessly, cutting off all paths of retreat and crippling Yin Qiu. Di Tian, you are too impudent. Zhuge Xiong's face was filled with rage. For this matter, Di Tian was too ruthless. He didn't even inform the Li-Fire Empyrean and directly crippled Yin Qiu. What did he mean by this? Grand Governor Zhuge, I respect you as the Grand Governor, and that's why I've always been polite to you. I'm acting according to the Realm Lord's will, yet you actually want to protect a governor who abuses his power for personal gain. Is this the Li-Fire Empyrean's intention, or are you acting on your own? I believe that the Li-Fire Empyrean will naturally understand my intentions. If you continue to use the Li-Fire Empyrean's name to suppress me, don't blame this seat for being impolite. Di Tian coldly snorted, his tones suddenly becoming extremely domineering. Zhuge Xiong started, his gaze unmoving as he stared at Di Tian. With a cracking sound, he clenched his fists tightly. Even with his endurance, he wanted nothing more than to kill Di Tian with a single punch. However, he knew that this was impossible. Because, he wasn't Di Tian's opponent at all. If he really acted here, Di Tian might dare to do what he did to Yin Qiu and cripple him as well. Di Tian clearly wanted to challenge the Li-Fire Empyrean's authority. What sort of character was he, Zhuge Xiong? How could he not see this? Yin Qiu was merely an excuse. What an unlucky fellow. You're on your own now. Zhuge Xiong angrily spoke as he brought Yin Qiu away. After hearing Grand Governor's words, did you know that the governors of the Li-Fire Palace have already decayed to such an extent? Seems like I, as the supervisory commander, have failed in my duties. Just as Zhuge Xiong soared into the air, he heard Di Tian's voice drifting over from behind. His body trembled unstably as he was so angered that he almost coughed out blood. From Di Tian's words, did he intend to investigate the other governors? Has Di Tian joined forces with the Jialan clan? A voice rang out in Zhuge Xiong's mind. After that, he was certain of his guess. Other than this, he truly couldn't think of any other reason why Di Tian would do this. Although the Emperor Pavilion grew stronger rapidly during these years, there wasn't a character at the Li-Fire Empyrean's level. Di Tian himself hadn't reached that level yet. There was only one possibility for him to challenge the Li-Fire Empyrean's authority now. That was to join forces with the Jialan clan. However, Zhuge Xiong didn't understand one thing. Di Tian already had such a bright future ahead of him. Why would he take the risk and join forces with the Jialan clan? He couldn't understand. The Li-Fire Empyrean received Zhuge Xiong's report. When he saw the crippled Yin Qiu kneeling on the ground, crying and begging him for revenge, his expression turned extremely heavy. Does Di Tian have that kind of relationship with Jialan Chuyue? The Li-Fire Empyrean asked Zhuge Xiong. The first thing he thought of was that Di Tian had joined forces with the Jialan clan. If not, there was no need for Di Tian to do this. I'm not sure, but from what I know, Jialan Chuyue has always maintained an ambiguous relationship with Di Tian. In fact, she really likes Di Tian. The Jialan clan also hopes that she can become Di Tian's official wife. Hence, as long as Di Tian nods his head, regardless of the beauty or the power of the Jialan clan, he would be able to obtain them easily. Zhuge Xiong analyzed. The Li-Fire Empyrean had a heavy expression on his face. Back then, during the grand banquet of the Lifelong Realm, the Lifelong Realm Lord personally opened a door for Di Tian. It was destined that no one in Li-Fire City would dare to touch Di Tian as long as he didn't violate the rules of Li-Fire City. Hence, as long as Di Tian was more cautious and joined forces with the Jialan clan, the Li-Fire Empyrean would definitely be in trouble. An example was the matter today. Di Tian directly acted against the governors of his Li-Fire Palace when he wanted to. As the Li-Fire Empyrean, he could only endure it because there was indeed a problem with Yin Xiu and Di Tian had already found out about it. Now, unless he removed all of the current officers, Di Tian wouldn't be able to find anyone to investigate. Otherwise, his subordinates would be in big trouble. The matter with Qin Wentian has yet to be resolved. Right now, Di Tian appeared out of nowhere. The Li-Fire Empyrean was extremely unhappy during these years. Di Tian's matter, how do you think we should resolve it? The Li-Fire Empyrean asked Zhuge Xiong. It's very troublesome. Yin Xiu said that Di Tian has already broken through to the peak stage of the Immortal Emperor realm. Unless the Li-Fire Empyrean acts personally, no one would be able to deal with him. Zhuge Xiong spoke. The Li-Fire Empyrean also felt that this matter was extremely thorny. He didn't expect that he would be threatened by an immortal emperor today. Given the current situation, we can only temporarily not touch him. Also, order the various governors to investigate the matter and admit to their crimes. Palace Lord, you can deal with them personally, making Di Tian unable to act. Zhuge Xiong spoke again. The Li-Fire Empyrean's eyes flashed. Right now, we can only do this temporarily. You can handle this matter. Since Di Tian wants to walk this path, I will grant him his wish. Right. Zhuge Xiong bade farewell. On the other side, Di Tian returned to the Emperor Pavilion's headquarters in the central city regions. However, the news of him acting against Governor Yin Xiu soon circulated around Li-Fire City. Right now, Di Tian was an influential character in Li-Fire City. How could this not shake the entire city when he crippled Yin Xiu? Yin Xiu was already the second governor Di Tian killed. Those who attended the banquet back then still remembered that Yin Xiu had objected when Di Tian suggested to deal with Xia Ho. Who would have thought that Di Tian would act against Yin Xiu now? This Grandmaster Di was truly showing off his brilliance more and more. In the Emperor Pavilion, Jialan Chuyue came over and looked for Di Tian. Di Tian knew that someone from the Jialan clan would come and he also guessed that it might be Jialan Chuyue. What do you want to do? Jialan Chuyue directly asked when she saw Di Tian. Di Tian laughed. What are you referring to? Jialan Chuyue rolled her eyes. What else can it be? You acting against Yin Xiu would definitely infuriate the Li-Fire Empyrean. It has been so many years and you have never expressed your stance. Isn't it because you wanted to avoid falling out with the Li-Fire Empyrean? Why are you doing this now? Di Tian sweated. This woman thought that he didn't marry her because of the Li-Fire Empyrean? You are truly narcissistic. Di Tian stared at Jialan Chuyue. Is that not the case? Jialan Chuyue's beautiful eyes flashed with confidence. She sat opposite to Di Tian and smiled. You haven't answered me yet. Could it be that you have finally thought things through? In that case, I'm waiting for you to speak. Cough cough. Di Tian stared at that alluring smile in her eyes and felt that he couldn't endure it. This woman's guts were truly getting bigger and bigger, she actually dared to openly tease him. I only feel that the position of the Li-Fire Empyrean should be changed. Di Tian stared at Jialan Chuyue as he slowly spoke.